Chapter 1, The Fox, the Hawk and the Cherry Blossom. Prologue, The Shadow of the Lone Prodigy. In the dark heart of Konoha, where the streets curved like veins under the moonlight, little Naruto Uzumaki was a paradox. He wasn't the dumb kid everyone thought he was. His mind wasn't a blank slate, but a complex scroll of military tactics and chakra calculations. He'd discovered the truth of his lineage at age 6, not through dramatic revelation, but through simple persistence. He'd used the transformation jutsu to sneak into the third Hokage's private library, not to steal, but to read. He read about Minato Namikaze, about Kushina Uzumaki, and about the creature sealed in her womb. The secret didn't terrify him, it set him free. He realized that if Konoha looked down on him, if they saw him as an idiot or a demon, it was the perfect opportunity for distraction. The shinobi art was based on deception, and he was the village's masterpiece of deception. While the other children were learning to do the hang to transform into Iruka, Naruto used his vast and almost unlimited chakra to train with Kage Bunshin in secret. The clones, with the subtle blessing of the Kyuubi, allowed him to multiply his study time by 100. He absorbed the theory of Fuinjutsu of his clan, he learned to manipulate the chakra natures in a rudimentary way and, most importantly, he became a born strategist. But power without purpose is hollow. Naruto didn't just seek strength, he sought connection. He didn't want people to recognize him as a hero, he wanted someone to recognize him. Faith. The forced isolation of childhood had planted in his heart a deep need, almost a hunger, for affection and, more specifically, for the fiery passion of a woman. Not just any woman. A woman who wouldn't shy away from his intensity, who wouldn't judge him for the beast within him, but would challenge him for the man he was driven to be. Naruto's perversion wasn't a joke, it was a manifestation of his longing for connection. He wanted to see through defenses, clothes, fears. He wanted to see a person's raw truth, and to him, the fastest way to lower a kunoichi's guard was with the audacity of a jutsu sexier with a compliment so blatant that it forced her to feel something. He wasn't looking for a platonic love. He was looking for fire. He wanted a partner who could fight by his side and then fight back. With they in a meeting where strength and passion were one and the same. Thus, Naruto's strategic genius was combined with an innate mischief and a deep sexual desire. His ambitions were clear, Hokage not for fame, but to protect the only village he truly knew. So that no one could touch those he loved again. A painful lesson learned from being a Jinchuriki. Love finding the woman, or women, who could handle the intensity of an Uzumaki and the raw power of a Kyuubi. The day after the bell test, as Kakashi handed him his prized book, with a warning that sounded more like a plea, Naruto already had a plan. He had spent the night absorbing the advanced theory of Kage Bunshin, which multiplied her thought process, not just physical training, and had read a third of Kakashi's book, learning that seduction was a Sannin-level spy tactic. Now, with the Chunin exam just around the corner, it was his time to shine. And to find his future partner. Act 1, The Scent of Danger and the First Hunt. The Chunin exam was the perfect stage. A parade of power, rivalry, and, most importantly, elite kunoichi with weak defenses. Team 7 was on the third floor of the academy. Sasuke, as always, tried to remain inconspicuous, Sakura was nervous, and Naruto was scanning the room. You, the one with the cat whiskers, have to learn to hide your tension, Naruto muttered, not looking at anyone in particular. Kiba Inuzuka turned around, furious. What the hell did you say, Dobi? Naruto smiled. I say you have Akamaru shaking in your jacket. If your dog is scared of the exam, what does that say about you? Prodigy, relax. They're going to sweep you away. The small confrontation caught the attention of the room. Naruto didn't want to fight, he wanted to control the flow. He wanted everyone to see him as the clown who talks too much so they'd let their guard down before the real test. A tall, elegant figure approached. It was Kabuto Yakashi, with his round-framed glasses and harmless smile. Calm down, everyone. The Chunin exam is difficult, and infighting doesn't help, Kabuto said, his tone condescending and grating on Naruto's skin. I appreciate the advice, Kabuto, Naruto said, stopping his gaze on him. It wasn't the smile of an idiot, but that of a predator who had found prey. But if you're so worried about the strain, why do you carry the chakra of 3 different people in your system, and why is your map too much updated to be that of a Jonin who has failed several times? Kabuto froze. His smile faded by a millimeter, a change only a Jonin-level sensor or a prodigy like Naruto would notice. "I don't know what you're talking about, Naruto-kun. I'm just trying to help," Kabuto replied, his voice still soft, but there was an invisible edge to it. "Oh, you do," Naruto said, approaching him, invading his personal space. "But I like your style. You're a risky gambler. I'll tell you what. If you dare touch any of my comrades, I promise the real Kyuubi will use you as a cleaning rag." The threat was real, visceral. Kabuto felt a pulse of cold, dark chakra emanate from Naruto, a pulse that didn't belong to a Jonin. "I see the village has underestimated you, Naruto Uzumaki," Kabuto said, regaining his composure. "I hope to see you in the next phase." He left quickly, knowing he had just been categorized. Sakura looked at Naruto with a mixture of fear and fascination. This Naruto. He was dangerous. "Naruto, you dared to challenge a spy without using a single jutsu," she exclaimed. "Spy?" Sasuke asked. "Yes, spy. Kabuto is a snake," Naruto said dryly. "His chakra is too disordered, and his fear is real. But that doesn't matter. What matters is the woman I'm interested in, right?" Naruto winked at Sakura, returning to his perverted facade. "I wonder if the Sanjinan is as hot as they say. She has a very large fan." Sakura rolled her eyes, but the pang of jealousy returned, stronger this time. The interrogator in the second phase. The first phase, Iviki's written exam, was a mockery of Naruto. Thanks to the cage bunshine by the night before, Naruto had already memorized the rules of shinobi telepathy and had developed a method to use his clones to copy the responses undetectably, not for lack of skill, but as a strategy of saving energy and time. The second phase, the Forest of Death. The presentation of Anko Mitarashi. When Anko walked in, her aura of danger and sadism filled the room. Her wild purple hair, revealing mesh jacket, and predatory smile made Sakura and Sasuke's stomachs knot. Naruto, however, looked at her as if she were a forbidden work of art. "Wow, what a lethal beauty," Naruto thought, feeling a familiar warmth. It wasn't just the power, it was the emotional scar he detected. Anko was a wounded, powerful, and self-hating woman. "Welcome, little insects, to the Forest of Death. I'm Anko Mitarashi, and I'll be your second examiner," Anko shouted, her voice a painful promise. "This is where cowards die and the brave cry." Anko threw a kunai with speed. The kunai wasn't aimed at anyone, but at Naruto, cutting his cheek superficially. "Hey, kid! Don't stick your nose where you're not called," a Ranger shouted, appearing behind Anko to retrieve his kunai. Anko, unfazed, licked Naruto's blood off her own kunai. The look she gave him was purely serpentine. "My, what tasty blood! And how insolent!" Naruto didn't scream or flinch. He touched the wound on his cheek, feeling Anko's warm, dangerous chakra. "I like your style, Anko-sensei," Naruto said, his voice deep, the predatory grin on his face, which this time wasn't perverted, but pure defiance. "But licking my blood doesn't bode well. Unless you want me to bite you back. You have the aura of the warrior who has fought a shadow, and I promise you my blood tastes like a Victoria." Anko froze. The way Naruto had looked at her, not with fear, but with the same dark fire she carried within her. The comment about fighting a shadow reminded her of her past with Orochimaru. No one dared speak to her so bluntly. It made her tremble, not with anger, but with a tension she hadn't felt in years. "Cheeky brat," Anko hissed, but her smile was more genuine. "You've got guts. I like that. Make sure you survive in my forest, because I'm looking forward to talking to you alone afterward. I'm curious what kind of jutsu secret you have in mind." The subtext was clear: "I'm curious to know what kind of demon you carry inside and if you'll make me feel alive again." The air between them fizzed. Sasuke and Sakura stared at each other, completely confused. The perverted Jonin had just had a sexually tense and power-packed interaction with an elite Jonin. The Forest of Death and the Serpent. Team 7 entered the Forest of Death, with Naruto leading, not by instinct, but by calculation. "Sasuke, you'll go in front. You're the fastest danger sensor," Naruto ordered, his voice that of a strategist. "Sakura, you'll go in the middle. We need your eyes for the Genjutsu and your chakra control for the ceiling traps. I'll bring up the rear." "Why me in the rear, Dobi?" Sasuke asked, annoyed at being used as bait. Because I'm the one who can react to most threats without relying on my eyesight. Plus, most teams attack from the front or flanks. The one who brings up the rear is the one who has the real responsibility, Naruto said. And I'm the only one here who can summon an army of clones to create a diversion if necessary. Sasuke gritted his teeth, but his logic was impeccable. The new Naruto was irritating, but his strategy was sound. The team moved efficiently. Naruto was constantly in contact with a cage bunshine invisible heat left at the entrance, gathering intelligence on which teams were entering and where. They were avoiding low-level conflicts and heading straight for where he knew the tension was highest. Naruto, I feel something watching us, Sakura whispered, her breathing ragged. It's not something, Sakura. It's someone. And it's thirsty for Uchiha blood, Naruto said coldly. Brace yourselves. We're being flanked. A genjutsu high-level damage is about to fall upon us. Sasuke, don't look into his eyes. Sakura, trust your Wen. At that moment, a figure emerged from the trees with sunshine fast as lightning. The kunoichi's face was soft, her neck abnormally long, and the smile. The smile was deathly. Orochimaru, transformed into the Jonan Kusagaku. Well. The last Uchiha, and the Kyuubi brat, Orochimaru hissed. An opportunity I can't pass up. Sasuke launched himself with a pure impulsive, but the attack was useless. Orochimaru used his Kasai no Jutsu wand, with terrifying speed, immobilized Sasuke. Sakura screamed, paralyzed with terror. Naruto didn't stop to think. He knew this was a fight they couldn't win the traditional way. He saw the terror in Sakura's eyes, and felt the Kyuubi's wrath in his own chest. Leave my companions alone, you filthy snake, Naruto shouted. Orochimaru laughed, his voice full of venom. Don't worry, Fox. I don't want to kill you, I just want to test if the boy has the potential to be my vessel. Gagyo-fun. Orochimaru struck Naruto with a stomach seal, seeking to disrupt the flow of the Kyuubi. The pain was instant and agonizing. Naruto collapsed, his chakra disorganized. Naruto-kun, Sakura shouted, running towards him, her fear turning to fury. But instead of a collapse, something extraordinary happened. The Gagyo-fun, it didn't stop the Kyuubi, it enraged it. Interference and foxfire. Orochimaru's seal was flawed on this prodigious Jinchuriki. Instead of blocking it, the Kyuubi's dense and malicious chakra reacted to the attack. Naruto stood up. His once blue eyes now glowed a demonic red, and his teeth lengthened into sharp fangs. A layer of red chakra began to bubble around him, but it wasn't a canon-destructive layer. It was a layer-controlled. Secret training with his clones had taught Naruto to channel the Kyuubi's chakra through his normal chakra system without it being consumed. It was dangerous, yes, but it gave him an exponential boost in power and speed. Don't you dare touch my girl, Naruto roared, addressing Sakura, not Sasuke. His perverted mind and his need to protect himself had merged. Orochimaru stopped. The chakra was familiar, but the control was unprecedented. Impossible. A Jonan. Controlling a bit of that power? Naruto launched himself. Not with brute force, but with a burst of speed so intense it overcame Orochimaru's Sharingan. Cage Bunshine no Jutsu. A dozen red clones appeared around Orochimaru, attacking him from all sides. They weren't looking to hit him, they were looking to immobilize him, force him to reveal his position. The real Naruto positioned himself behind Sakura, using his body as a chakra shield. Sakura, focus your chakra. I need you to get us out of here with a Kawarimi big. Naruto ordered, his voice distorted by the fox's chakra. Orochimaru smiled, a grim smile. Interesting. But not interesting enough. At that moment, Orochimaru felt a familiar presence. Too late. Anko Mitarashi fell from a tree, his face a mask of fury and fear. Orochimaru. I knew you'd come, Anko shouted, unleashing a torrent of kunai explosives. Orochimaru was forced to release Sasuke and defend himself against Anko. But the distraction had already been fatal. Naruto, with his red chakra cloak, had created a hole. Now, Sakura. Use the earth. Sakura, scared but confident in Naruto's command, focused her healing chakra on the ground. Naruto's Kyuubi's chakra mingled with her own, giving her a power boost. Doton, Toryuki. A wall of earth rose between Orochimaru/Anko and Team 7. It wasn't the strongest technique, but it was the distraction they needed. Naruto grabbed Sakura and a stunned Sasuke. Run. Don't look back. They rushed into the forest, leaving Anko to fight the Sannin, the Blood Dead and the Secret in the shop. Team 7, exhausted, found a safe place. They obtained their scroll and headed for the tower. But Naruto wasn't okay. Higagyo Fuinya blocked his Uzumaki chakra, leaving the Kyuubi in a state of imbalance. He was pale and sweating profusely. The next day, just before the preliminary matches, Anko approached Naruto. She found him alone in a corner, practicing seals with terrible difficulty. Anko sat next to him, offering him a room suite. "Good work, brat," Anko said, her voice low and lacking its usual mockery. "You saved me." He retreated. "Your chakra blast was the key. You stalled for time, and that gave me the advantage I needed." Naruto took the dengo, feeling the warmth of his hand. "I didn't save you. I saved my comrades. But I'm glad you got it out, sensei." Anko looked at him. "What you did was dangerous. That seal he put on you. It's hell. It's disrupting your chakra flow. Why haven't you told Kakashi?" "Because Kakashi has his own demons," Naruto said, biting into the dango. The sweet taste was a relief. "And because if I can control him with that seal, I'll be invincible. I need my chakra to be a weapon that doesn't rely on a single flow. I want to be the master of my own pain." Anko felt a shiver of admiration. The boy wasn't a fool. He was a strategic masochist. "You're very similar to him, you know. In your pursuit of power. But you're more brilliant," Anko admitted, her voice breaking a little. "The dead is mine. He was my master. And you, for some strange reason, have saved me from my past." Naruto bowed, using the advice Shizune had given him. The unfulfilled promise. "Debt is paid with training, Anko-sensei. I need you to teach me how to use Thajutsu you have up your sleeve. The one that makes you so fast and so deadly," Naruto said. "And in return, I promise I'll never leave you alone with your shadow. And I'll lead all the dango with you." Anko felt a warmth in her belly she hadn't felt in years. The young prodigy, the one who had seen her as a wounded warrior, was offering her a way out. A connection without judgment. "Deal, brat. From now on, you and I have a secret relationship. But if you tell anyone about this, I'll cut your tongue out," Anko warned. "My mouth is sealed. But my mind is open to your lessons. And your fantasies," Naruto whispered, his gaze lingering for a second on Anko's mesh jacket, causing her to bite her lip. The first romantic and power connection had been established. Naruto had his secret mentor and a way to control his chakra, the preliminaries and the changing fate. The preliminary matches were a whirlwind. Naruto, with his Uzumaki chakra slightly blocked, was forced to rely purely on his cunning. He defeated Kiba in a quick fight, using a jutsu of deception based on smell, and then a cage bunshin with hang to confuse him with Akamaru, causing him to lose control of his sense of smell. The final matches were rescheduled due to injuries and the defection of some Genin, including the disguised Orochimaru. The fights were Shikamaru vs Tosuke Nuta, Shikamaru Gana Porendi Sionda Dosu, Shino Aburame vs Zaku Ibumi, Shino Gana, Naruto Uzumaki vs Neji Hyuga, Sasuke Uchiha vs Yoroi Kato, Sasuke Gana, Gaara of the Desert vs Rock Lee, Gaara wins. Temari del Desierto vs Choji Akimichi, Temari Gana. Naruto and Neji's fight was a masterclass in attrition strategy. Naruto couldn't touch Neji. His Byakugan and his Yukan, they were invincible in direct combat. "Give up, Dobe. Fate can't be changed. You're destined to be a loser," Neji shouted, as he punched the clone's chakra point. Naruto smiled. "Fate is just a loser's excuse, Neji. My destiny is Khaled freedom." Naruto used hundreds of clones. Not to attack Neji, but to cover the stadium with dust, leaves and smoke. Reduced visibility to zero. The Byakugan Neji could see through things, but he couldn't see through the deception. The real Naruto, hidden underground thanks to a dowry which he learned from his clones, he waited. Neji, unable to see the physical threat, focused on chakra. But Naruto's chakra was in chaos. Hundreds of clones, each with a bit of chakra. Finally, the real Naruto emerged from the ground, beneath Neji, using the only pure force blow he could deliver. Uzumaki Naruto Rendan. Neji was struck from below, where he couldn't defend himself, and the attack of Taijutsu Basic, amplified by the Kyuubi's energy, threw him against the wall, leaving him unconscious. Naruto Uzumaki had won. Not by strength, but by cunning. Anko, watching from the sidelines, felt her heart pound with excitement. The boy was a strategic genius with a willpower she hadn't seen in a long time. The taste of defeat and Temari's interest. Due to the intensity of the battles, the third Hokage decided to restructure the schedule. The final battles would be held in a month. The new clashes were Shikamaru Nara vs Gaara del Desierto, Sasuke Uchiha vs Shino Aburame, Naruto Uzumaki vs Temari del Desierto. Naruto, still sore from the Gagyo-fun, but with the Kyuubi's chakra slowly working to counteract it, he faced Temari. Temari was tall, blonde, and carried a gigantic fan. Her posture was one of military arrogance. "The kid who defeated a Hyuga," Temari mocked. "You're overrated. My Fuden will wipe you off the face of the earth." "A windflower. I like it." Naruto smiled, but his eyes were serious. "But windflowers have fragile stems, Temari. I, on the other hand, am the whirlwind that breaks the trees. Show me your worst attack." The battle was a dance of elements. Temari used her futon wind release to create cutting blasts, forcing Naruto to use his clones to create barriers. Naruto cleverly allowed Temari's bursts to become too large. The larger Temari's attack, the more energy she expended and the more predictable she became. "Give up, you useless one. You're at the mercy of my fan," Temari shouted, exhausted. Naruto, covered in wounds, stood up. Only one clone remained, the strongest. "The rules of the sand don't work here, Temari. Here, I control the air," Naruto said. Naruto dashed forward, using the final clone. Temari, confident, closed her fan. Futon, Kaze no Yaiba. But Naruto didn't attack. The clone dissolved into smoke. The real Naruto had used the Dalrito crawl under the sand that Temari had used for distraction. Naruto emerged from underneath Temari, grabbing her by the waist. Temari screamed, surprised by the intimate contact. It wasn't the disgusting attack of a perverted Jonin, it was the strength of a warrior. "I've got you, Windflower." Naruto didn't attack her. He hugged her. The contact immobilized her. The shock of the contact and the fear of embarrassment made her hesitate. "Now," Naruto shouted. Temari tried to break free, but Naruto's grip was like steel. The Kyuubi's chakra, mixed with the strength of an Uzumaki, immobilized her completely. Temari, without her fan open, was defenseless. "Temari surrenders," shouted Baki, the Jonin of Suna, seeing the humiliation of his kunoichi. Naruto released Temari. She fell to the ground, breathing heavily, but not from exertion. Her face was red, her heart pounding. "You beat me. Using such. Temari couldn't finish the sentence. The contact, the strength, the audacity. The boy had humiliated her in front of her village, but he'd done it with a strategic skill that surpassed her. Naruto smiled, his face exhausted but radiant. "Sorry, Windflower. You need to focus on taijutsu if you're going to put your weapon aside. And yes, you're as hot as they say. Hope to see you after this," Naruto said, and limped out of the stadium. Temari stood alone, clutching her waist. She had never felt so vulnerable before, and strangely, Savista the defeat wasn't bitter, it was intriguing. That night, Naruto, bandaged and with the Gagyo-fun still in operation, he met Anko at the training camp, just as they had agreed. Anko wore her jacket open and her air was more relaxed. "You got lucky against Temari, brat. But your cunning is Jonin level. You impressed me," Anko said, giving him an energy drink. "It wasn't luck, sensei. It was a diversion. I saw her hesitate when I hugged her." "Powerful women have a weakness in their own image," Naruto said, with a mischievous smile. Anko approached him, the tension between them palpable. The moon shone brightly over the forest. "Your true training begins now, Naruto. I will teach you to use your body as a Jonin-level weapon," Anko whispered, her hand gently resting on the wound in his abdomen. "I will teach you to release the chakra off your body without using seals, and to use that power to sense an opponent's intent. It's an infiltration technique." Anko sat next to him, their bodies almost touching. The fastest way to heal a chakra seal is with a connection from another chakra. We must merge our chakras, Anko explained, her voice a sensual murmur. It's not sexual, but it is intimate. Are you ready for this lesson, Uzumaki? Naruto stared at her, feeling the heat of her body and the danger of her chakra. I'm always ready for forbidden lessons, Anko-sensei. Especially if they come from you. And so began Naruto's mentorship, not only of infiltration techniques and speed, but of erotic tension and deep connection. A path that would lead him to unprecedented power and encounters that would define his love life. Naruto went to sleep early that night because the next night was the finals of the Chunin exams. He will face his rival Sasuke Uchiha, who had defeated Gar in a match that generated great impact. Gar had semi-transformed into the Shukaku, but Sasuke with his Sharingan and Chidori managed to defeat him. He had to use his Chidori 3 times, which made him faint, but with the victory, the confrontation had been postponed for the next day because of the duration of the matches. It had been postponed for the next day because of the time. The last match had ended at 8 at night. Naruto went to sleep thinking about 2 things: his new accomplice teacher Anko-sensei and her danger in defeating the idiot Sasuke. The clash of geniuses, the unleashed serpent, and the forbidden taste. The midday sun beat down on Konoha Stadium. The roar of the crowd wasn't just a cheer, it was a thunderclap that resonated in the souls of the thousands of spectators. Flags bearing the leaf symbol waved wildly, creating a wave of green and white that colored the horizon. The atmosphere was electric, charged with the anticipation of seeing the final of the Chunin exams. In the upper box, the Kage feudal lords watched solemnly. But in the stands filled with Jonin and Jonin, the emotion was raw. Act 1. The Windflower and Obsession. In the section reserved for the Jonin of Sunagakuer, Temari of the desert, she couldn't have been more restless. Her posture was the same as always, arrogant, with her closed fan resting on her shoulder, but her green eyes betrayed an inner turmoil. Would you calm down, Temari? You're moving too much air, growled Kankuro, her brother, as he adjusted the seals on his Karasu puppet. Shut up, Kankuro, Temari hissed. It's not the air, it's the anticipation. Yesterday's battle, Gaara was humiliated by the Uchiha, and today, the time Wabitmi will face him. But it wasn't just the humiliation. Temari kept touching her hip and waist, right where the Jinchuriki he had held her. The memory of that maneuver wasn't one of disgust, it was one of a strange, unexpected submission. The strength of that grip, the audacity of his smile beneath the layer of demonic chakra. He beat me. Not with a technique, but with contact. He took me by surprise, invaded my space, and pinned me down. It's the most blatant tactic I've ever seen, Temari thought, gritting her teeth. That kid has the fire of war in his veins, but he hides it with circus tricks and an idiot's face. I want to see that fire consume the arrogant Uchiha. For Temari, Naruto's victory over her had been an awakening. He had challenged her on a level no Sandman had dared. She was absorbed in the idea that this time was actually a predator. Act 2, The Divided Heart and the Secret Connection. Down below in the arena, Naruto and Sasuke stood face to face. Sakura Haruno watched from the stands, feeling his heart wrench. He had always loved Sasuke, the cool, quiet prodigy, his crush childhood platonic. But since the Forest of Death, something had changed. Naruto was no longer a nuisance. He was a force of nature. His audacity against Kabuto, his strategy against Neji, and that palpable tension he had created with the Jonin Anko and the Kunoichi of Suna, Temari. Sakura saw the man beneath the idiot. A dangerous, intelligent man, who had called her my girl when the snake attacked. Sasuke-kun is the goal, the son of my future. But Naruto is the whirlpool. A danger I can't stop staring at. How could he become so competent and so brazen at the same time? Kakashi Hitake, sitting on the edge, read his Icha paradise, but his silver eyes were fixed on his students. He knew Naruto was a genius. He had noticed the strange chakra ceiling he had, the Gagyo-fun, and the fact that he hadn't run to ask her for it, but had instead found a solution himself, spoke volumes about his newfound independence. He had also noticed his dangerous complicity with Anko. Just then, a familiar presence slipped in next to Kakashi. Anko Mitarashi, with his snake-like grin and mesh jacket. Look how focused he is, Kakashi, Anko hissed, but her tone was proud. Looks like my alum Nido's ready for the show. Don't worry. I prepared it. You prepared? Anko, what did you do to her? Kakashi asked, putting down his book, his tone suddenly serious. Anko smiled, licking her lower lip. I gave him a boost. I helped him understand how to force that seal into a limitation instead of a weakness. I showed him that he can use pain as a tool. He's a strategic masochist. I like him. The truth was that the encounter the night before had been intense. The chakra fusion to heal the seal had been an excuse. Anko had placed her hands on Naruto's torso, feeling the chaotic density of the Uzumaki chakra and the fiery swirl of the Kyuubi. The electricity between them wasn't just biological, it was the connection of two souls seeking danger to feel alive. Anko's quick flashback, erotic tension, her face was inches from his. Feel my chakra, Naruto. It's fast, it's poisonous, it's pure attack. Watch it, don't think about my body. Think about the flow of energy. When I bite you, turn the pain into fuel for your own attack. Naruto had grown slightly at the pain of the seal, but his gaze never left Anko's. Your chakra smells sweet and dangerous, sensei. I like it, Naruto had whispered, before the chakra seal on his abdomen opened slightly under the combined pressure. Anko pulled back, panting slightly. Enough. That's the lesson. Now, go to sleep. Back at the stadium, Anko straightened. I just gave him a strategic push, Kakashi. The rest is up to his genius. Act 3, The Battle of the Prodigies and the Genjutsu Hidden. Hajime, the examiner, gave the signal. Let the final battle begin. Naruto Uzumaki vs Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke wasted no time. He activated his level 2 Sharingan 2 blades, analyzing every muscle in Naruto, looking for weaknesses he could exploit. Give up, Dobe. You don't stand a chance, Sasuke said, Uchiha arrogance oozing from every word. Naruto smiled, not a stupid smile, but a predator's smile. Your arrogance will be your downfall, Sasuke. And I love that smug look. I'll be sure to erase it with my own fists. Phase 1, the sensory trap. Naruto launched himself. Not with the Rasengan or with any obvious demonic force. He simply ran, and instantly, he threw 10 Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 10 clones. Seriously, Dobe? You're so predictable. Sasuke mocked. Sasuke moved with his new Jonin speed, destroying clone after clone with precise taijutsu. However, he failed to notice one crucial detail. Each clone that disappeared it left a tiny particle of residual chakra in the air, mixed with dust and dirt. Naruto's strategy. Naruto wasn't using his clones to attack, he was using his clones to pollute the environment. Higagyo-Fuin still blocked his pure Uzumaki chakra, so he couldn't use the Rasengan easily. However, the Kyuubi gave him an inexhaustible reserve. Naruto had developed a sensory distraction jutsu based on the theory of genjutsu. By saturating the air with microparticles of residual chakra, he was creating constant interference for the Sharingan. Sasuke destroyed the last clone. He was panting, but unharmed. That's all you've got? Are you sure? Asked the real Naruto, appearing behind him. Sasuke turned, activating his Sharingan to its fullest potential. His eyes now saw the tiny particles of chakra in the air, an invisible haze that subtly distorted his spatial perception. It was as if the Sharingan were suffering from signal interference. You're playing dirty, Dobe. Sasuke growled, throwing a punch. Phase 2, the clash of taijutsu on the raw force. Naruto blocked it. Sasuke's blow was fast and technical. Naruto's whispered force amplified by the minimal layer of Kyuubi chakra his body had learned to channel. Naruto and Sasuke engaged in hand-to-hand combat that amazed the crowd. Temari stood up, her mouth slightly open. His taijutsu isn't as elegant as Lee's, but it's relentless. It's the strength of a wild animal that has learned to box. It's the strength with which he held me. Sasuke, confident in his Sharingan, tried to predict and dodge. But the interference of the residual chakra in the air made his predictions off by millimeters. Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu. Sasuke released a massive fireball. Naruto smiled. He knew Sasuke was trying to remove the polluting chakra. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 100 clones instantly appeared, charging at the fire. It wasn't to put it out, it was to create a massive smoke and steam screen. Chaos was Naruto's strategy. When the smoke cleared, Sasuke was panting. The Sharingan was consuming too much chakra due to the overload of visual information. Phase 3, the last resort and the inevitable victory. It's over, Naruto. You can't overcome my power, Sasuke roared, his hand charging with crackling lightning chakra. Chidori. It was the speed of light. Sasuke launched himself, his target being Naruto's chest. Naruto didn't dodge. He knew that the Chidori was too fast. Instead, he unleashed a torrent of clones, about 50 of them, that charged into Sasuke's path. Sasuke tore through them all. But each clone he touched slowed his momentum for a split second, and each burst of residual chakra from the clone was a stab at his Sharingan. The attack didn't deflect, but it lost precision. The real Naruto was waiting, not in the center, but slightly to the right. When Sasuke finally reached him, the Chidori had hit. But it wasn't a killing blow. It was an agonizing graze on his shoulder, searing flesh and chakra. Naruto roared in pain. But pain, as Anko had taught him, was his fuel. The seal Gyofun he tensed, and a layer of red chakra, denser and more controlled than ever, covered his right arm. It's not enough, Uchiha. Naruto grabbed Sasuke's arm with his uninjured hand. Sasuke, exhausted from the triple chakra from the previous day and the overload of his Sharingan, he was unable to free himself. Naruto lifted Sasuke up, his face distorted by the Kyuubi's pain and fury. Taijutsu Basic became an unstoppable force. Uzumaki Naruto Rendan. Naruto slammed his left foot into the ground, launched Sasuke into the air, and in one swift motion, used his bandaged hand to punch him with a force that resonated throughout the stadium. It was the same move he used against Neji, but with 10 times the impact. Sasuke crashed into the ground, creating a crater. His Sharingan shut down, and his body lay motionless, completely knocked out and on the verge of a chakra collapse. The crowd fell silent, then erupted into a deafening roar. Hajime raised Naruto's hand. The winner is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto fell to his knees. The pain of the friction of the Chidori was unbearable, but his smile was radiant. He had won. Not with a jutsu special, but with cunning and resilience. Anko, from the box, smiled broadly. I told you he was a genius, Kakashi. Temari stared at the boy, her heart pounding furiously. He had used his own cunning, his own raw and persistent force to defeat the prodigy of the blade. He bit his lip. I want to fight him again. And I don't care if the fight ends like the last one. The rivalry had become an obsession. The debt of victory and the serpent's warning. The Anbu medics took Sasuke away. Sakurashi ran towards Naruto, tears in her eyes. Naruto-kun, you're hurt. You're an idiot. But you won. Naruto laughed, his voice raspy. Relax, precious. I just need you to wrap this with bandages. You have the softest hands, so why don't you help me cover the wound? His smile was mischievous, despite the pain. Sakura, blushing furiously, began applying the bandages with the medical equipment. The contact was intimate, and for the first time, she didn't feel disgust or discomfort. She felt the strength of his body and the intensity of his gaze. The moment was broken when a shadow fell over them. It was Kabuto Yakushi, with the same harmless smile. Congratulations, Naruto-kun. An amazing victory. But you should know that chakra injuries like the ones you have require more than just bandages. Naruto looked at him. Get out of my sight, snake. I'm busy with the most beautiful nurse in the leaf. Kabuto smiled coldly. I just wanted to give you some advice. In this village, chaos doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes, it comes with a whisper. Watch your back, and above all, watch your teachers. Kabuto disappeared. Naruto stood up, the pain from his wound a constant reminder, but a strategist's mind kicked in. He knew Kabuto was referring to Konoha's internal tension and the secret connection with Anko. Naruto looked up at the box. He saw Gaara with an expression of suppressed agony. He saw Baki, the Jonin of Suna. The tension wasn't from external war, but from latent danger. Sasuke's elimination from the tournament meant their immediate threat had passed, but the danger from Suna remained. Steaming Bowl Emoji, Chapter 3, The Embrace of Steam and the Forbidden Flavor. Night fell upon Konoha with an unusual stillness. The roar of the stadium had died away, leaving only the silence of victory. Naruto Uzumaki walked through the streets, the weight of his triumph and the dull ache of his injured shoulder his only companions. He had defeated the Uchiha prodigy, humiliated the Hyuga of Destiny, challenged a Kunoichi of the Sand, and outsmarted a Sannin. He was the new champion of the Leaf. And he was completely alone. Act 1, The Champion's Solitude. The reality of victory was bittersweet. By winning, he had dispelled the dumb Dobi charade, but at the same time, he had confirmed in the eyes of the village that the demon within him was strong. People looked at him with a mixture of fear and resentment. There were no spontaneous celebrations, no pats on the back, only the tense silence of a village that feared its own hero. Winning. What good is all this power if no one really sees you? If everyone only sees Zoro or the jester, Naruto thought, kicking a rock. His connection with Anko was hot and dangerous, but it was secret, based on pain and training. His spark with Temari was pure rivalry. But his Jinchuriki heart, isolated since childhood, longed for something simpler, acceptance. The path led him, as always, to his refuge, the Barichiraku Ramen. It was the only place in Konoha where people's gaze wasn't judgmental, but welcoming. The hot steam of the broth and the smell of miso were the only constants in their chaotic life. Act 2, The Revelation in the Steam. Naruto sat on his usual stool, the only customer at that late hour. Tuchioji-san, Ayame-chan. The usual. Extra large with double the pork and an extra egg, Naruto shouted, his voice trying to sound optimistic, but with a hint of exhaustion. Ayame came out of the kitchen. She had always been there, serving his ramen with a friendly smile, but Naruto, obsessed with being Hokage, with the jutsus, with Sasuke, and lately, with the intensity of Anko and Temari, he had never stopped to see her. Tonight was different. The silence of victory and the solitude made him truly look. Ayame wasn't a kunoichi. She didn't have Anko's dangerous aura, Temari's military elegance, or Sakura's biting sweetness. Ayame was the embodiment of mature warmth. Her long, dark hair was simply tied back, but a few soft strands framed her gentle, mature face. She wore the simple ramen stand uniform, but the fabric curved subtly over a body that had blossomed with the grace of adulthood. Her shoulders were soft, her neck was slender, and for the first time, Naruto noticed the way her almond-shaped, lightly made-up eyes regarded him with genuine warmth. Good heavens! How did I not notice? Ayame-chan is gorgeous. And she has these soft curves. Right where my hand would fit if I wasn't serving my plate, Naruto thought, feeling a flush that had nothing to do with physical exertion. His perverted, strategic, and now wounded mind kicked in. It wasn't the burning desire to hunt, but the need for shelter. Ayame poured the bowl for him, her fingers brushing the rim of the porcelain. Congratulations, Naruto-kun. Tuchioyaji is in the back, but he saw you. We are so proud of you. You defeated that Uchiha with sheer audacity, Ayame said, her voice soft and musical. Thank you, Ayame-chan, Naruto murmured, taking a sip of the broth. It was the best ramen he'd ever tasted, or maybe it was the first time the warmth of ramen had mingled with the warmth of a person. Ayame sat across from him, wiping down the bar. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? You won. You should be celebrating with fireworks, Ayame asked. Naruto shrugged, letting his facade drop for a moment. I don't know. It's just. Victory feels a little lonely. It's hard being who I am. People don't forget that, you know? Ayame stopped cleaning. Her eyes looked at him with an understanding that pierced Naruto's defenses like no other jutsu had done it. Naruto-kun, my father and I have never seen the demon. We've only seen a boy who visits us daily, who loves ramen more than anyone, and who has a big, loud heart, Ayame said, her voice firm. Today, I saw the warrior. You saw everyone's truth, and you dared to be the real you, without the Genon tricks. That made me very happy. Naruto felt a lump in his throat. That genuine, simple acceptance was what he'd sought since he was a child. Act 3, The Genuine Contact and the Silent Promise. Silence fell, but it wasn't awkward. It was intimate. Naruto finished his first bowl in a second. Another one, please, Ayame-chan. I'm hungry, Naruto said. Ayame poured him the second bowl. As she leaned in, her hair slid lightly over Naruto's bandaged shoulder. The contact was fleeting, but Naruto felt the soft scent of spices and the warmth of her body. It was a scent of home, of refuge. She straightened, and their eyes met. Naruto-kun, Ayame said, with a small smile that made her look even more attractive. The rule is that if a Konoha Junon wins the final phase of the Chunin exams, they eat for free that night. For the Ichiraku house, it is an honor. Really? You're the best, Ayame-chan, Naruto shouted, his joy genuine. But then his voice softened. Thank you. Really? It's the best gift I've received today. Ayame placed her hands on the bar, leaning slightly, her gaze never leaving Naruto's. You had an amazing fight. I was so nervous for you, Ayame whispered, her tone conspiratorial. Naruto felt the heat of her gaze. It was a look that invited him, not to the danger of a fight, but to the safety of connection. It was a look that said, you can let your guard down with me. He leaned in, using the instinct of his new mischief, but with unusual honesty. I was wondering how many winning Junon you've seen over the years, Ayame-chan. Ayame laughed, a light, musical sound. Some. But none with your heart, Naruto-kun. So, since you're the only one, could I get something other than ramen, Ayame-chan? Naruto asked, his voice low and seductive, playing on the edge. Ayame felt the pulse of Naruto's intensity. It was the same fire that had consumed the Uchiha and the Hyuga, but directed at her. There was no fear in his eyes. She was a mature woman who understood the desire in his gaze. And what is that, Naruto-kun? Some of your time. Could we talk about your favorite ramen? Somewhere quieter sometime? Naruto asked. Ayame bit her lip gently. The flirting was obvious. Perhaps. A champion of Konoha deserves a deep conversation. After he fully recovers. And after Theaji don't be watching. The message was clear, yes, I'm interested. But with discretion. Naruto smiled, the smile of a victor. He had gained a genuine connection and the promise of something more. He stood up, the emptiness of loneliness replaced by the warmth of ramen and hope. So, see you soon, Ayame-chan. I promise to come back tomorrow, even if I have to pay, Naruto said, pausing for a moment. He raised his hand, hesitant to touch her. She took the hint and nodded, her smile growing more intimate. Naruto withdrew his hand, but the look he gave Ayame was a promise of the passion and connection he longed for. Act 4, The Relapse and the Forbidden Call. Naruto returned to his apartment, feeling more at peace than he had in days. Ayame's warmth had been a balm, but the peace was fleeting. Barely had he stepped through the door when the pain in his shoulder returned with renewed fury. Sasuke's residual chakra and the seal Gagyo-fune joined forces to torture him. His body began to shake, and a rapid fever swept over him. The wound wasn't healed, it was just stabilized. No. I can't fall now. Tomorrow I have to start training for real. The alliance with Temari. The danger of Gaara. I need the power, Naruto thought, falling to his knees. Ayame's ramen and smile were not enough to heal the wound of a Chidori. Only someone else's fire could do it. Naruto got up with difficulty. He walked to his window and sat on the sill, concentrating his chakra. He didn't use a jutsu. He used the same sensory and intimate cult that he used last night with Anko. It wasn't a command, it was a plea. A plea of pain and desire. There was only one person in Konoha who could handle his pain and his fire. In the darkness of the forest of death, Anko Mitarashi, she woke up, her heart racing. She felt the pulse of Naruto's chakra, chaotic, needy, fiery. It was a call she couldn't ignore. Her little student needed her, and she knew exactly what she had to do to administer the dose of danger. Chapter 4, Blood, Sand, and the Alliance of Danger. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon, tinting the roofs of Konoha a soft golden hue. It was the dawn after Naruto's great victory, the day the village was still digesting the new order. The calm, however, was only superficial. Act 1, The Demon Awakens. In the lodging reserved for the shinobi of Sunagakure, the atmosphere was one of palpable terror. The room of Gaara was not made to contain the madness of a Jinchuriki. Gaara stood in the center of the room, his face a map of pulsing veins. His defeat by Sasuke, and the even greater frustration of not being able to test his strength against Naruto, had broken him. Shikaku's presence was almost physical, a constant whisper of hatred in his mind. "Mama! He took my blood! He took my blood, Mama!" Gaara shouted, referring to the Chidori of Sasuke and, more deeply, to the fox blood he'd sensed in the air during his brief confrontation with Naruto. For Gaara, Every touch was an invasion of his being and a betrayal of his mother. I want their blood. I want to kill them. Kankuro and Temari were immobilized by fear. Kankuro, with his puppet unarmed, tried to talk to his brother. Gaara, calm down. We have to go. Konoha is going to find out. Stop. Shut up, Gaara roared. The sand that normally covered him burst from his gourd and formed a massive, monstrous arm that slammed Kankuro into the wall, knocking him unconscious. Temari, the sand warrior, stood up, her fan closed in her hand. She was terrified, but her instinct was to protect her brother, and her own life. Gaara, stop. We're your family. We're from Suna, Temari yelled, backing away toward the door. Gaara spun around, Shukaku taking over his features. His right eye turned completely yellow and unhinged, his mouth opened in a demented snarl. Family. You're nothing. You're just flesh to my love. Sand shot up from the ground, forming hundreds of sharp spikes that headed straight for Temari. Temari raised her fan in a desperate attempt to block, but she knew the Shukaku's force was unmanageable. Act 2, The Fox and the Underground Attack. A few blocks away, Naruto was finishing wrapping fresh bandages around the shoulder Anko had stabilized. The intimate contact the night before had been as effective as it was exhausting, but that story would wait. His strategist's mind wasn't resting. He was thinking about the alliance with Temari and the latent danger posed by Gaara. Suddenly, his sense of Jinchuriki shot out. It wasn't just a wave of chakra. It was a wave of hate and raw scent that he knew too well. Gaara. It's out of control. It wasn't a war, it was a personal crisis. The snake lied about the invasion. But the danger is real, Naruto thought, feeling Temari's desperation in the chakra wave. I can't let him kill the only person in Suna who looks at me without hatred. And Gaara needs a blow to the head that only the fox can give him. Naruto didn't waste a second. He ran towards the place, activating 10 Cage Bunshine in the air, which instantly transformed into doves. Visual and audio distractions. Let the village think they're just birds. Not that the demon is active. He arrived at Suna's house and saw the broken exterior wall. Temari was trapped, covered in sweat and sand. Gaara, please. Temari begged. The sand was about to engulf her. Naruto entered with a kick, breaking the door. Gaara, stop playing with sand. It's time for a real challenge, Naruto shouted, his voice distorted by the red chakra that enveloped his body in a thin, controlled layer. Gaara turned, his bloodthirsty yellow eyes boring into Naruto. You're the fox. You have his blood. I'm gonna take high tea. Not if I catch you first, raccoon. Temari. She collapsed behind the wall, staring at Naruto. He had come. He had saved her. Her heart pounded with a mixture of gratitude and the intense attraction that only danger could generate. Act 3, The Forced Embrace and the Warrior's Loyalty. The battle was short, brutal, and focused. Naruto wasn't looking to defeat Gaara, but to immobilize him. Gaara was pure fury. The sand, now with the Shukaku seal visible, attacked Naruto with crushing force. Sabaku-Q, Desert Coffin. Naruto launched dozens of Cage Bunshin to distract Gaara. But Gaara was no longer playing with visual distractions, he attacked with chakra. The real Naruto moved quickly, with the taijutsu basic that he had developed, dodging by millimeters. Naruto saw his opportunity. Gaara was distracted by the pain of his internal wound and the rage of the Shukaku. Temari. Your blood contract. Now, Naruto yelled. Temari, understanding the order, stood up. Her fear was gone, replaced by the warrior's determination. She opened her fan with a snap. Futon, Kakeyami, wind mesh. A powerful gust of wind hit Gaara, slowing his sand for a crucial second. That second was all Naruto needed. Using a Shunshine powered up, slipped under the torrent of sand and grabbed Gaara from behind. It wasn't a fighting grab, it was a restraining hug. Get a grip, Gaara. You're not him. You're Gaara, Naruto yelled, injecting his own chaotic, healing Uzumaki chakra directly into Gaara's neck, near the seal. The contact was agonizing for both of them. Gaara screamed. Shukaku roared. But Naruto's strength, sustained by will, did not yield. Gaara collapsed. Shukaku's chakra receded. The sand that threatened to destroy the neighborhood fell to the ground as harmless dust. Naruto released Gaara, falling to his knees, panting. His shoulder burned, Gagyofun. He was blinking. He had exhausted his stabilized chakra reserve. Temari approached him. Kankuro moved in pain. "Naruto. You saved him?" Temari whispered, unable to believe that her brother had been subdued by a Genin without a fatal attack. "I didn't save him. I subdued him. I gave him the chakra blast he needed to stop him from listening to his mother," Naruto said, exhausted. He turned to Temari, his gaze intense. "You fulfilled the blood contract, Windflower. Now, you are my ally. And I am your teacher in the arts of intimate surrender." Temari blushed furiously. She had felt the heat of Naruto's body, the strength of his grip, and the intensity of his will. The shame of her earlier defeat was replaced by a dangerous admiration. "You saved me. That's a blood debt," Temari said, her voice military, but her body not moving. "No. It's a passion contract," Naruto corrected, smiling. Act 4, The Blood Debt and the Secret. The arrival of the Anbu and Kakashi at the scene was noisy. They saw the destruction, the unconscious Kankuro, and the collapsed Gaara, guarded by Temari and Naruto. "Naruto. What the hell happened here?" Kakashi asked, his Sharingan activating as a precaution. Naruto didn't lie, but he did manipulate the truth masterfully. Gaara didn't accept his defeat. He tried to attack his own sister. I intervened. Temari acted as my ally under my direction, using her Futando give me the opening. Kakashi looked at Temari. She nodded, her face serious. "Thatame, you're right. My brother is out of control. If he hadn't intervened, we'd be dead. I'm asking that we be allowed to leave Konoha in 2 hours. I need to get my brother to safety in Suna before this happens again." The third Hokage, who had arrived at the scene, nodded, seeing the sincerity in Temari's eyes. The invasion wasn't Suna's, it was a Jinchuriki crisis. "Okay, Temari. Go. But Thatame will escort you to the gates of the village. And I'll tell you again, if you attack the leaf again, there won't be a Dobi to stop you." Temari bowed her head, her gaze meeting Naruto's. There was a silent promise and a debt to be paid. Act 5, The Intense Farewell. 2 hours later, Temari, Kankuro, bandaged, and a still sleepy Gaara were ready to leave. Naruto escorted them to the main gate of Konoha. "Thank you, Naruto," Temari said, looking at Kankuro and Gaara. "This I won't forget. You saved me from death and humiliation." "I know. And I got paid for it, didn't I?" Naruto winked at her, his perversion returning, but now mixed with genuine affection. Temari smiled, a small, dangerous smile Naruto had never seen. "The blood contract has been fulfilled. The debt, however, has not. And in Suna, we don't leave debts unpaid," Temari whispered. She approached him, and before the guard's eyes, she did something bold. Temari took Naruto's good hand and placed it on her waist, right where Naruto's grip had subdued her the day before. "You're the fox who knows how to dominate with a touch. When we meet again, Naruto Uzumaki, I promise you that the blood contract will be remembered. And if you touch me like that again, I hope it's in a place without guards or cages." Temari withdrew her hand, leaving Naruto to feel her waist beneath his palm. The erotic tension was at its peak. The desert warrior had accepted Naruto's intensity and the promise of future passion. Naruto laughed, his voice pure victory. "Then you'd better train your taijutsu, Windflower. Because next time, I won't be so gentle." Temari nodded and left, the promise of future passion and rivalry between them as strong as the wind that blew her away. Naruto stood, his mind whirling, Ayame's warmth, Temari's promise, and Anko's looming call to danger. The path of the rogue prodigy was just beginning. Chapter 5, The Night Lesson and the Kyuubi's Touch. The sun had already set over Konoha, carrying with it the heat of the battle against Gaara. The adrenaline had subsided, and now only agony remained. Naruto Uzumaki dragged himself to his apartment. The wound on his shoulder was a living hell. The impact of the Chidori Sasuke's chakra overload and immobilizing Gaara had led to the seal Gagyo and not the limit. The restriction of his Uzumaki chakra, combined with the intense pulse of the Kyuubi, made him tremble with fever and pain. Ayame was a warm dream, but it's not enough for this kind of pain. Temari is a fiery promise, but I need fire now, Naruto thought, falling onto his bed. He couldn't go to the hospital. A Genin with a shoulder burned by lightning chakra and a faulty seal would only raise too many questions, especially after the confrontation with Gaara. There was only one person who would understand his need and his method. With a supreme effort, Naruto concentrated his pain, his desire, and his chaotic chakra into a single pulse. It was not a jutsu, was a sensory lament addressed to the only soul that resonated with suffering and passion. Anko Mitarashi. Act 1, The Arrival of Danger. Barely 10 minutes later, a shadow slipped through Naruto's open window. Anko Mitarashi entered the small apartment. His face was not one of mockery or anger, but of intense concern and a curiosity bordering on excitement. He wore his chainmail jacket under a hired dark, but its poisonous snake aura could not be hidden. She saw Naruto lying on the bed, sweating, his blue eyes barely visible under the red cloak of the Kyuubi struggling to free itself. "Stupid brat. I told you to control your pain, not turn it into an I'm dying beacon," Anko hissed, but quickly moved closer. You understand, sensei," Naruto gasped, reaching out a trembling hand. "Gaara. It was too. The Chidori, it's killing me. I need you to teach me how resist these, Todo Usite." Anko knelt beside the bed. She touched the wound. There was no healing heat, only the cold knowledge of agony. "I can't heal you with medical chakra, Naruto. I specialize in inflicting pain, not stopping it. But I can teach you how to master it. To use pain as an anchor for your mind, not a rope." Anko took off her haori, left in only her revealing mesh jacket. Erotic tension filled the small space. It was a suit of armor she wouldn't part with, and Naruto looked at it, not with foolish desire, but with the admiration of a warrior. "Then teach me your domination, Anko-sensei. I need my mind to be stronger than this demon and this seal," Naruto whispered. Act 2, Sensory Domination. Anko nodded. The look in Naruto's eyes, the mix of desperation and will, made her feel alive. It was the same fire she'd sought in the past, but without the manipulative darkness. "Tonight's lesson is the sensory domination," Anko began, her voice a deep murmur. "Your mind is fighting against two chakras, the Block 2 Uzumaki and the Free Kyuubi. I'm going to show you how. Fuse those energies in your mind, to feel the pain and pleasure, and to turn them into one thing: control." Anko sat on the bed, bringing her body closer to Naruto's, until their knees touched. She placed a cold hand on Naruto's abdomen, over the seal Gagyo-fun the other. He gently slid down the side of her chest, brushing the unbroken skin. "Focus on my hands, Naruto. Ignore the fire on your shoulder. Feel the cold in your belly and the touch on your skin. Now, breathe and push your Kyuubi chakra towards the point of contact of my hand on your belly. Don't resist my touch." Naruto groaned, but not from the pain in his shoulder. Anko's touch was a shock. The pressure on the seal was agonizing, forcing the fox's energy to flow chaotically, but the touch on his chest was pure stimulation. "And more, sensei. I need more of your cold touch," Naruto gasped, his body arching slightly. "That's it, brat. The pain of the seal is real, but so is the pleasure of the distraction. Feel the snake chakra penetrate your barriers, not to harm you, but to make you to feel," Anko ordered, her breathing quickening. Anko's chakra was not healing, but stimulating. She was using her Jonin control to force Naruto's senses to focus on the touch, the pressure, and the intimacy of their bodies, creating a mental barrier against the crippling pain of the Chidori on the Gagyo-fun. Anko moved her hand from her belly to the side of her body, forcing Naruto to focus his energy on a different point, chasing contact and sensory relief. "You're an animal, Uzumaki. Your chakra responds to domination, not supplication," Anko whispered, her voice deep and laced with mischief. "Now, thrust the fox's fury at my touch. Give me your fire." Naruto closed his eyes, and for an instant, his consciousness was lost. Red chakra enveloped his body, but this time, it wasn't a layer. It focused on the spot where Anko's hand touched his skin. Anko's chakra, the snake, and Naruto's chakra, the fox, joined together, not in attack, but in sensory connection. Act 3, The Mentor's Wish. Anko felt the heat. It wasn't a dangerous heat, but a controlled burst of raw energy. Naruto's face was inches from hers, his breath hot and ragged. "This boy is more than Orochimaru ever was. He doesn't just accept pain, he devours it and turns it into passion. He dominates me with his need, even when I'm in control," Anko thought, feeling her own body ignite. She leaned in, her purple hair brushing Naruto's neck. Her face was so close that Naruto could smell the dango and the danger. "You have passed the test, Uzumaki. You have turned agony into an anchor. You are the master of your own pain," Anko exclaimed, her voice husky with excitement. Anko removed her hand from his side. Naruto's fever had gone down, and although the wound wasn't healed, the pain was no longer crippling. His mind was clear, and his blocked Uzumaki chakra was, ironically, more stable. "What do you want from me, Anko-sensei?" Naruto asked, his voice now firm, the mischief returning. "You teach me lessons no one else does. You touch me in ways no one else dares. What is your reward?" Anko smiled, her smile pure defiance. She leaned closer, until her lips were barely an inch from Naruto's. The tension was so thick it was almost painful. "My reward is simple, Naruto. Your intensity. I want you to show me what you can do with this. Sensory domination next time. Not against him Chidori, but against me. I want you to hold me without me asking and show me that you can dominate my body without using a jutsu," Anko whispered, her eyes glowing in the darkness. Naruto got the message. She was asking him to seduce and control her, using the infiltration skills she taught him. "Deal, Anko-sensei. Next time, I'll make you ask me to touch you," Naruto promised. Anko laughed, the sound a chill in the night. She stood up, put on her haorian and went to the window. "Rest. Thefu and Jutsu on Sanin level strategies await. And don't forget what I taught you. The body is the most sensitive weapon." Anko disappeared into the night, leaving Naruto in his bed, exhausted, his pain under control, and a burning desire for the teacher who taught him to be a predator. Ramen and the Fortress of the Heart. The morning sun felt unusually gentle on Naruto's skin. The pain from his wound was still there, a constant throb, but it was no longer paralyzing. Anko's sensory domination had taught him to encapsulate the pain, to turn it into a latent energy rather than agony. He was a stronger warrior, but he was still a man who longed for peace. The path led him, inevitably, to his Temple of Solace. Act 1, The Ramen Refuge and the Change of Look. When Naruto sat down on the stool at Ichiraku Ramen, he didn't do so with his usual boom of "same old boss." He slid in with the calmness of a wounded shinobi and leaned back against the counter. "Good morning, Naruto-kun. Congratulations again. That battle against the Uchiha was historic," she exclaimed. Tucci, the owner, wearing his usual chef's hat. "Thank you, Tuchioji-san," Naruto said, with a genuine smile. "But today, could it be a small bowl of miso? I'm not very hungry." Tucci and Ayame exchanged a worried look. Naruto, ordering a small plate without shouting, was a sign that something beyond physical injuries was ailing him. "Ayame," she approached, pouring a cup of hot tea. Her kind, mature eyes met Naruto's. "You're tired, Naruto-kun. If you want to talk about the fight with Gaara, or the things the village is saying," Ayame said, her voice soothing. "No, it's not that, Ayame-chan," Naruto said, taking the cup and feeling the warmth in his hands. "It's hard being a Jonin. And people, see you as a demon, or a jester, or a half-baked hero. It's a lot of pressure. Sometimes I just want someone to see me as Naruto." Ayame sat opposite him, her hands folded on the bar. Her posture was one of absolute concentration. "We see you, Naruto-kun. We really see you," Ayame said. "I know," Naruto replied. "That's why I'm here. It's not for the ramen, even though it's the best. It's for the only real thing I have in this place. You're welcome." Naruto's flirting had transformed. It was no longer the mischief of a teenager, it was the mature honesty of a man looking for connection. Act 2, The Intimate Confession and the Jinchuriki's Fortress. Naruto, feeling safe in Ayame's non-judgmental gaze, leaned across the bar, lowering his voice. Tucci was busy in the back, giving the couple a moment of privacy. "Ayame-chan, do you ever feel like you're a secret? Like your life isn't yours, but a duty?" Naruto whispered. Ayame looked at him with deep understanding. "Duties are heavy, Naruto-kun. This shop is my duty. It forces me to be strong and kind, even when I'm tired. But sometimes, when I see what they put you through, I feel like my duty is small. You bear the greatest duty of all." Naruto felt his eyes water. She had gotten to the heart of the matter, to the truth about the Jinchuriki. "My chakra. It's chaotic. It's the reason I win. But it's also the reason no one comes close. It forces me to be strong, forces me to be alone. The only person who truly touches me is someone who can't heal me, only teach me how to endure. It's exhausting, Ayame-chan. Naruto had exposed himself. He hadn't lied about his chaotic chakra or the touch connection he had with his mentor. He was seeking refuge, not in passion, but in acceptance. Ayame slid her hand along the bar, reaching for Naruto's. That sounds terrible, Naruto-kun. Having to be strong even when alone. Yes. That's why. I wanted to be the Hokage. So that no one has to carry loneliness like mine, Naruto said, his tone solemn. Ayame smiled, a luminous smile that made him feel like he could move mountains. You're a beautiful person, Naruto-kun. Inside and out. And don't worry about your chaotic chakra. Every good broth needs chaotic ingredients to have flavor. And you have great flavor. The simple, unpretentious compliment hit Naruto harder than a Rasengan. Act 3, the desire for refuge and the approach. Naruto looked at Ayame. Her hair fell softly, her eyes were warm, and the curve of her neck was an invitation to comfort. She was stability, peace, refuge. The opposite of Anko. The opposite of Temari. Ayame-chan, Naruto said, his voice now a purr of affection and desire. You have the strongest heart in Konoha. You're the only person who can make the weight of this seal and this chakra feel light. And you're incredibly beautiful. Ayame felt heat rise up her neck. She wasn't a kunoichi, she was an ordinary woman, but the intensity of Naruto's gaze made her feel desired in a way her quiet life had never offered. Thank you, Naruto-kun. You're a very attractive man too. Especially when you're not screaming, Ayame teased, but her eyes were fixed on his. Naruto leaned in. Ichiraku's counter seemed to disappear. All that existed was the steam of the ramen, Ayame's scent, and the intensity of their gazes. The desire for a touch, a kiss, a connection deeper than friendship. I need your comfort, Ayame-chan, Naruto whispered. Ayame, her heart beating rapidly, slid her hand over the bar, searching for Naruto's. It wasn't a touch of magical healing or dangerous dominance, but a touch of honest support. Ayame's soft palm met Naruto's rough, bandaged hand. The touch was electric. Naruto felt a surge of peace that contrasted with Anko's dangerous electricity. It was the touch of home. Ayame gently squeezed her hand, her eyes closing slightly, ready to take another step, to cross that border between bar and ramen. Act 4, disaster interrupted. Just as Naruto was about to stand up, and Ayame was about to lean over the bar, a loud, cheerful voice broke the bubble of intimacy. Ayame-chan. I'm done with the boning. Did you give the free sample of secret ingredients to the champion? Tucci, the owner of Ichiraku and Ayame's father, came out of the kitchen with a grease-stained apron and a gigantic smile, holding a giant onion. Naruto and Ayame jumped back as if they had been electrocuted, quickly separating their hands. Ayame blushed up to her ears, picking up a cloth she didn't need to pick up. Father. Yes. Of course. I was just telling Naruto-kun about the importance of vegetables in the diet of an injured shinobi. Tucci, unaware of the palpable tension that had filled the booth, approached Naruto. That's right, Naruto. You're the champion. Don't forget that a strong stomach makes a strong ninja. Eat whatever you want, it's for the house. Naruto instantly regained his loudmouthed idiot facade, but his eyes met Ayame's. The look they shared was a mixture of frustration, shame, and a renewed promise that that moment would return. You're right, Tsuchiyoji-san. I'm a champion, and I need more than a small plate. Bring out the giant bowl. And Ayame-chan, the extra pork one, Naruto shouted, his voice filled with the energy the intimate moment had restored. Ayame laughed, but there was a tone of excitement in her voice that only Naruto could detect. Naruto ate with his usual ferocity, but his eyes occasionally strayed toward Ayame. He had found her refuge and had advanced his courtship with honesty. The emotional connection was as strong as the carnal desire. The promise of the wind and the contract of passion. Sunagakur was a prison of sand and solitude for Temari of the desert. A week had passed since they returned from Konoha, and Gaara's trauma had been temporarily contained. The scorching desert sun, however, did nothing to calm the fire burning in the kunoichi's belly. Act 1, the nightmare of surrender. Temari found herself in the training grounds, an open area where the wind could rage unchecked. She was exhausted, her futon had cut through rock formations, but had not managed to dissipate their frustration. He closed his eyes, and the image returned, again and again, the same nightmare. It wasn't Gaara's face that terrified her, nor her brother's scream. It was the heat. The fox's heat. She was against the wall of the arena, helpless. Naruto's arm, strong, with that thin layer of demonic red chakra, had held her. He hadn't hurt her, he had restricted. He had lifted her up and brought her close to his body in an embrace of domination. She had felt the brute force of his muscles, the labored breathing in her ear, and the wild pulse of his heart. And beneath all that power, she'd felt something else. Something hard, vigorous, and completely masculine at her waist, pressing against her body. Temari opened her eyes, her breathing shallow. She touched her waist. The feeling of that blatant pressure and the unstoppable force the Uzumaki's drove her crazy. He hadn't just beaten her in strategy, he had subdued on a physical level that no man in the arena had dared to do. It's a tactic, she told herself, her voice trembling. A shameless tactic. Humiliating, but the humiliation had ignited something else. He's powerful, he's smart, and he's brazen enough to use his body as a weapon to disarm me. He saw me as a woman and a warrior, and he overcame me using both of those weaknesses. It turned me on that he was so gifted in his backside attributes. It made me feel the intensity of the fire within him. Act 2, The Training of Obsession. Temari threw her fan, opening it with a sharp snap, and unleashed a blast of futon which pulverized a nearby rock. I won't be caught off guard again, Temari shouted into the wind, her voice full of promise. His training that day was not futon. It was of taijutsu. Temari, the long-range specialist, was training in close combat, forcing herself to create false openings, to use her knees and elbows. She was training to accept and counter proximity. He moved so fast he looked like a hawk attacking. She no longer feared the contact, she anticipated it. If Naruto returned to collect his passion contract, she wouldn't run away. She would be ready. After hours, Temari returned to her room. Her body was exhausted, but her mind was feverish. The blood debt against Gaara, the debt of victory in the exams, and now the personal debt. Act 3, The Coded Letter. Temari sat at her desk, picking up a thin scroll and a quill. Her hand trembled with desire, but her strategist's mind took over. She couldn't type a personal message. Cage's instant messenger was monitored. I had to write a challenge that only he could time strategic that had subjected her could understand. He began to write in military handwriting. Subject: Blood Contract Remembrance and Tactical Review. To Naruto Uzumaki, El Zoro, Konoha Core. Blood contract has been fulfilled, Gaara matter. However, your tactical victory about me in the arena remains a point of disadvantage. Criticism for Suna and a security breach staff for this kunoichi. Wet tactical integrity demands that this debt be rectified personally. The goal is to assess whether your maneuver domination by contact was it a coincidence or Ionin level reproducible skill. I propose a tactical review. Place the Forest of Death, Training Camp 44. The environment is safe for the deployment of intimate techniques and exclusion of witnesses. Time when the new moon, total darkness, is at its zenith. This was their coded way of saying as soon as possible and in secret. Aim contact must be intense and sustained like in the sand. If you achieve the tactical surrender without using a jutsu offensive, the arena's debt will be paid. If you fail, the debt will be yours. I await your reply. And I warn you, Uzumaki, I have been training for countered hat movement. Next time, I won't be so gentle with your anchor point. Yours faithfully, Temari of the Desert, the Falcon. Temari read the letter. It was perfect. It sounded like a mission report, but the subtext was a volcano of desire. The reference to the anchor point was her own mischief, a direct allusion to the contact she'd felt that had disturbed her. He sealed the scroll with Suna's crest wax, handing it to a high-speed messenger bird. Run quickly, Hawk. Take my challenge to that cunning idiot. I want to see if he can tame my fire without the fear of the audience. I want the fox to remind me of the feeling of surrender and warmth. Temari stood up, her heart pounding with the promise of the secret reunion. The revenge wasn't for the defeat, it was for the burning desire that Naruto had ignited in her warrior heart. The fox and the hawk were destined for a duel that would not be won with jutsus, but with passion. The tactic of domination and the Falcon's challenge. Night came to Konoha, bringing with it mystery and the promise of danger. Naruto Uzumaki stood in the forest of death, at his secret meeting point. In his hand, he held the scroll of Temari. I had read and deciphered it. The passion contract was activated. Act 1, the reaction and the preparation. Naruto handed the scroll to Anko Mitarashi. She read it with jonin speed, but with an expression that alternated between fury and fascination. That cheeky brat. A tactical check of your contact domination? And she challenges you to a tactical surrender in a secret place, Anko hissed, clutching the scroll. What did you say to that desert kunoichi to make her dare to do so? Naruto smiled, the fox smile he'd learned to use. I just showed her that my brute strength is real, sensei. And she, like you, realized that the body is the most interesting battlefield. But I need to know if my technique is reproducible. If she can escape, my control is not jonin level. Anko looked at Naruto. Temari's challenge had struck a chord with him, the exclusivity of her training and her passion for danger. Alright, brat. Tonight we're going to simulate that tactical surrender. And I swear, if you let me get away, I'll rip your ears off. You have to dominate my body, or you lose the bet with that desert girl. Your victory depends on your ability to deny my freedom. That's the plan. I want you to try with all your might to break free, Anko-sensei. If I lose, it means my grip and focus aren't dominant enough. And time is my gauge, Naruto said, taking off his jacket, revealing the bandage over his wound, which sensory domination Anko's remained stable. Act 2, the simulation of surrender. They stood in the center of the clearing. Anko assumed a defensive stance, her muscles tense beneath her mesh. Naruto moved with speed. Not with sunshine, but with speed powered by the Kyuubi which he had perfected in the stadium. He slipped behind Anko. The challenge wasn't to hit her, it was restricted. Naruto held her in the same grip he used on Temari. The move was inverted embrace of dominance, which pinned Anko's arms against his torso. His body pressed against hers, and the difference in warmth and density was palpable. The challenge, now, Anko-sensei. Break free. I want you to use all your Nuno escape techniques. Naruto ordered. Anko wasted no time. She was an expert in torture and infiltration, her escape techniques were elite level. Chakra infiltration escape. Anko tried to inject a pulse of cold, cutting chakra into Naruto's arms, looking for a pressure point to force him to let go of her. Naruto answers. Naruto squeezed even tighter. Last night's sensory domination lesson came into play. He absorbed Anko's chakra pulse, using it to amplify high zone concentration. It's not working, sensei. Your poison is my fuel. I push harder. Escape by physical rotation. Anko spun violently, using centrifugal force to knock Naruto off balance. At the same time, she tried to use her head to punch him in the jaw. Naruto answers. Naruto stayed glued to her like a second skin. His taijutsu de la bestia channeled brute force, gave her an immovable center of gravity. You're fast, sensei. But your rotation only makes me hug you tighter. I won't let you go. Your surrender is inevitable. Act 3, the chronometer of passion. The minutes passed. 5. 10. Naruto's grip didn't weaken, but rather grew more intimate. Anko's breathing, initially furious with exertion, turned into excited gasps. Her body, pressed against Naruto's, she felt the fox's heat, the hardness of his masculine attributes against her, the detail of the vigor and endowment Naruto's, and the iron will of his apprentice. The mesh of his jacket rubbed against Naruto's shirt. Naruto, let me go. This isn't fair. You're using too much of Kyuubi's strength. Anko screamed, but her voice was weak, betrayed by a desire. I'm not wearing a full cloak, sensei. I'm wearing my willpower, and my will is stronger than your need for freedom, Naruto said, his voice now deep and husky. Feel my warmth. Feel my pulse. You are mine in this moment, Anko-sensei. Surrender to my domination. Anko struggled a little longer, but her strength dissolved in the heat. The constant rubbing of their bodies, the sound of his breathing in her ear, and the inescapable pressure Naruto's hugs made her give in. She surrendered to the hug, letting her head fall on Naruto's shoulder. Act 4, the lesson of domination. 15 minutes and 32 seconds. Naruto realized she had stopped struggling. Her body had softened against his. You won, brat. You won, Anko whispered, her voice one of complete defeat and ecstasy. Your grip is an S-level seal. You're a dominance predator. Naruto held her for a moment longer, savoring his victory. He had overpowered an elite Jonin, a master of escape. Temari's challenge was no longer a risk, it was a game. Naruto slowly released her. Anko staggered, her face flushed, her dark eyes shining. Now you know, sensei. My technique is reproducible. Temari's weakness is that she didn't expect me to use my body as a seal. Her body gave out before her mind did. Now, my grip will be hell for the windflower. Anko composed herself, her kunoichi pride returning. Fine. But don't forget why you won. It's not just your strength. It's because you absorb the enemy's pain and resistance and you turn them into your strength. You have to stay mentally superior. Don't let her take the initiative. She approached him, and this time, the touch wasn't one of training, but of a dangerous reward. Your victory is my defeat, Naruto. And my punishment for losing is you telling me what you want me to do next, Anko whispered. I've taught you my dominance. Now, take your price. Naruto smiled, his strategist mind already working on his next move with Ayame and the duel with Temari. My price is simple, sensei. I need you to look at me like that one more time. And to tell me, as your punishment for losing, that I am the most promising shinobi in Konoha, and the only one who makes you feel this way. Anko laughed, her laughter a sound of surrender. You're the only one, Naruto. The only brilliant idiot who's ever dominated me on contact. And you don't know what I would love for you to do to me to complete your domination lesson. Anko quickly kissed Naruto's wound, the touch of her lips cold and electric. Now, go. Prepare your strategy for the desert girl. And don't keep me waiting too long for the next lesson. Anko vanished. Naruto stood, victory in his body and the promise of two fiery women in his mind. Anko's explosive passion and Temari's military defiance. The tactic of domination and the Falcon's challenge. Night came to Konoha, bringing with it mystery and the promise of danger. Naruto Uzumaki stood in the forest of death, at his secret meeting point. In his hand, he held the scroll of Temari. I had read and deciphered it. The passion contract was activated. Act 1, the reaction and the preparation. Naruto handed the scroll to Anko Mitarashi. She read it with Jonin speed, but with an expression that alternated between fury and fascination. That cheeky brat. A tactical check of your contact domination? And she challenges you to a tactical surrender in a secret place, Anko hissed, clutching the scroll. What did you say to that desert kunoichi to make her dare to do so? Naruto smiled, the fox smile he'd learned to use. I just showed her that my brute strength is real, sensei. And she, like you, realized that the body is the most interesting battlefield. But I need to know if my technique is reproducible. If she can escape, my control is not Jonin level. Anko looked at Naruto. Temari's challenge had struck a chord with him, the exclusivity of her training and her passion for danger. Alright, brat. Tonight we're going to simulate that tactical surrender. And I swear, if you let me get away, I'll rip your ears off. You have to dominate my body, or you lose the bet with that desert girl. Your victory depends on your ability to deny my freedom. That's the plan. I want you to try with all your might to break free, Anko-sensei. If I lose, it means my grip and focus aren't dominant enough. And time is my gauge, Naruto said, taking off his jacket, revealing the bandage over his wound, which sensory domination Anko's remained stable. Act 2, the simulation of surrender. They stood in the center of the clearing. Anko assumed a defensive stance, her muscles tense beneath her mesh. Naruto moved with speed. Not with sunshine, but with speed powered by the cubing which he had perfected in the stadium. He slipped behind Anko. The challenge wasn't to hit her, it was restricted. Naruto held her in the same grip he used on Temari. The move was inverted embrace of dominance, which pinned Anko's arms against his torso. His body pressed against hers, and the difference in warmth and density was palpable. The challenge, now, Anko-sensei. Break free. I want you to use all your Nuno escape techniques. Naruto ordered. Anko wasted no time. She was an expert in torture and infiltration, her escape techniques were elite level. Chakra infiltration escape. Anko tried to inject a pulse of cold, cutting chakra into Naruto's arms, looking for a pressure point to force him to let go of her. Naruto answers. Naruto squeezed even tighter. Last night's sensory domination lesson came into play. He absorbed Anko's chakra pulse, using it to amplify high zone concentration. It's not working, sensei. Your poison is my fuel. I push harder. Escape by physical rotation. Anko spun violently, using centrifugal force to knock Naruto off balance. At the same time, she tried to use her head to punch him in the jaw. Naruto answers. Naruto stayed glued to her like a second skin. His taijutsu de la bestia channeled brute force, gave her an immovable center of gravity. You're fast, sensei. But your rotation only makes me hug you tighter. I won't let you go. Your surrender is inevitable. Act 3, The Chronometer of Passion. The minutes passed. 5. 10. Naruto's grip didn't weaken, but rather grew more intimate. Anko's breathing, initially furious with exertion, turned into excited gasps. Her body, pressed against Naruto's, she felt the fox's heat, the hardness of his masculine attributes against her, the detail of the vigor and endowment Naruto's, and the iron will of his apprentice. The mesh of his jacket rubbed against Naruto's shirt. Naruto, let me go. This isn't fair. You're using too much of Kyuubi's strength. Anko screamed, but her voice was weak, betrayed by a desire. I'm not wearing a full cloak, sensei. I'm wearing my willpower, and my will is stronger than your need for freedom, Naruto said, his voice now deep and husky. Feel my warmth. Feel my pulse. You are mine in this moment. Anko-sensei. Surrender to my domination. Anko struggled a little longer, but her strength dissolved in the heat. The constant rubbing of their bodies, the sound of his breathing in her ear, and the inescapable pressure Naruto's hugs made her give in. She surrendered to the hug, letting her head fall on Naruto's shoulder. Act 4, The Lesson of Domination. 15 minutes and 32 seconds. Naruto realized she had stopped struggling. Her body had softened against his. You won, brat. You won, Anko whispered, her voice one of complete defeat and ecstasy. Your grip is an S-level seal. You're a dominance predator. Naruto held her for a moment longer, savoring his victory. He had overpowered an elite Jonin, a master of escape. Temari's challenge was no longer a risk, it was a game. Naruto slowly released her. Anko staggered, her face flushed, her dark eyes shining. Now you know, sensei. My technique is reproducible. Temari's weakness is that she didn't expect me to use my body as a seal. Her body gave out before her mind did. Now, my grip will be hell for the windflower. Anko composed herself, her kunoichi pride returning. Fine. But don't forget why you won. It's not just your strength. It's because you absorb the enemy's pain and resistance and you turn them into your strength. You have to stay mentally superior. Don't let her take the initiative. She approached him, and this time, the touch wasn't one of training, but of a dangerous reward. Your victory is my defeat, Naruto. And my punishment for losing is you telling me what you want me to do next, Anko whispered. I've taught you my dominance. Now, take your price. Naruto smiled, his strategist mind already working on his next move with Ayame and the duel with Temari. My price is simple, sensei. I need you to look at me like that one more time. And to tell me, as your punishment for losing, that I am the most promising shinobi in Konoha, and the only one who makes you feel this way. Anko laughed, her laughter a sound of surrender. You're the only one, Naruto. The only brilliant idiot who's ever dominated me on contact. And you don't know what I would love for you to do to me to complete your domination lesson. Anko quickly kissed Naruto's wound, the touch of her lips cold and electric. Now, go. Prepare your strategy for the desert girl. And don't keep me waiting too long for the next lesson. Anko vanished. Naruto stood, victory in his body and the promise of two fiery women in his mind, Anko's explosive passion and Temari's military defiance. Ramen and the secret midnight date. The day after the grueling domination training with Anko, Naruto felt simultaneously exhausted and strangely clear-headed. His mind was sharp, his body, though sore, calm thanks to the mental control his mentor had instilled in him. Temari's letter and the promise of a secret duel were a constant thought, but first, he needed to recharge his soul. The afternoon sun bathed the village. Naruto, keeping up his noisy facade for the others, headed for his shelter. Act 1, The Perception of the Aura. When Naruto sat down at Ichiraku's booth, he wasn't the same as the night before. There was a new layer of maturity on his face, but also an aura of controlled fatigue. He looked like a predator who had just gotten off the hunt. Ayame, she served him the bowl of miso he had ordered. Her eyes examined him with a keenness beyond any Jinan. "You're comer, Naruto-kun. But you look like a shinobi who's seen too much night and fought too much in the dark," Ayame whispered, her voice filled with genuine concern. "I'm a shinobi, Ayame-chan. And sometimes, the best lessons are taught by the light of the moon," Naruto replied with a tired wink. The comment was a half-truth. The light of the moon was Anko, and the lesson was controlling his own passion. "And the wounds on your body, how are they?" Ayame asked, her gaze fixed on the bandaged shoulder. "Better. They're stable. But they need the warmth that only this place offers," Naruto said, taking a large sip of ramen. It was the honesty he reserved just for her. The one that had nothing to do with the nine-tails or the jutsus, but with his need for affection. Tucci approached, chatting about the new flower prices, creating the perfect space for complicity. Ayame leaned over the bar, her face close to Naruto's. The scent of spices and cleanliness was an anchor of normalcy. "I have something for you, Naruto-kun," Ayame whispered. "Something my father won't let me sell. He says it's too exotic for the Konoha market. But it's my secret. And I think you, as the boy who won the exam, deserve a secret." Naruto felt a surge of emotion. A secret date, a forbidden dish, and Ayame's vulnerability. It was a trap he was happy to step into. "A secret ramen? And it's just for me?" Naruto asked, his blue eyes sparkling with mischief and affection. "Yes. But to prove it, I need you to come here much later. After my father is asleep. You'll have to sneak in." Ayame winked at him, her smile sweet and knowing. "At midnight. Don't be long." Act 2, The Midnight Intrigue. Naruto returned to his apartment with an anticipation he hadn't felt since his failed date with Ayame the week before. The training with Anko and Temari's challenge were fire. The date with Ayame was water. And he needed the balance. At midnight, Konoha was silent. Naruto, no longer a noisy Jinan, moved with the caution Anko had taught him. He jumped over Ichiraku's back wall and slipped into the outpost. Ayame was already there, in the dim light of a lit lantern. She was wearing a work jacket, but her hair was loose and her face was relaxed. The stall, usually filled with noise and steam, was a quiet and deeply intimate place. "I knew you'd come," Ayame whispered. "I wouldn't miss a secret of yours for anything, Ayame-chan," Naruto replied, his voice low and laden with an affection he never used with anyone else. Ayame approached. "Come on. Sit down. Tuchioji-san is sleeping like a log, but we can't risk it." Naruto sat at the counter. Ayame took out a small pot and began preparing his ramen. "My secret ramen is called Shigure no I, love of the downpour. It's a broth made with vegetables and rare spices that I found. It doesn't have pork in it, but its flavor is deep, warm, and makes you feel very safe." As she spoke, Naruto watched her. Not as a shinobi, but as a man watching the woman who offered him the anchor of his life. The movement of her hands, the way she leaned over the bowl. It was the grace of the woman who had found peace in her work. Act 3, The Touch of Affection in the Open Heart. Ayame served him the bowl. The ramen was a creamy color, with an earthy, spicy aroma that was both exotic and comforting. "Try it," Ayame ordered, with an expectant smile. Naruto took the first sip. His eyes widened. "Ayame-chan. This is amazing. It's like a warm hug. It's the best thing I've ever tasted." "That's what it does," Ayame said, her face beaming with pride. "It heals the soul, not the body." Naruto ate slowly, savoring every bite. Ayame sat next to him. "What's troubling you, Naruto-kun? The battle with Gaara? The loneliness of being the champion?" Ayame asked, her tone suddenly serious. Naruto leaned back against the wall. He felt safe with her. "Both. But it's the loneliness of always having to be strong, Ayame-chan. My sensei teaches me to endure pain with strength, to turn it into willpower. But you teach me that it's okay not to be strong sometimes. That I can just be me," Naruto confessed. Ayame nodded slowly. She knew Naruto had secrets that kept her away. But this moment belonged to them. "You have to be strong for the world, Naruto-kun. But allow yourself to be loved for yourself," Ayame said. She raised her hand and, with a tender, gentle gesture, touched Naruto's injured shoulder, right over the bandage. "Let me give you my warmth, Naruto-kun. It won't heal your wound, but it will remind you that there is a reason to fight for peace. A sweet reason, Ayame whispered. Naruto felt the affection. It was the opposite of Anko's demanding and dangerous touch. It was a touch of shelter and tenderness, the comfort that is Jinchuriki, wounded by years of abandonment, desperately longed for. Act 4, The Promise of the Kitchen. Naruto turned to Ayame, his heart open. Ayame-chan. I'm not the easiest guy to love. But you're the only one who doesn't demand anything from me. And that makes me love you even more, Naruto said, his hand sliding down to her waist. Ayame blushed deeply at the intensity of his gaze and the firm but respectful touch of his hand. She leaned in, her face very close to his. I don't ask anything of you, Naruto-kun. Just your truth, Ayame whispered, her voice sweet and her breathing mingling with his. My truth is, I want to spend more nights with you, here, with you in the kitchen. Learning your secrets. And I don't just mean ramen, Naruto said, his tone deep and seductive. Ayame didn't respond with words. She simply gently kissed Naruto's forehead, a kiss of deep tenderness, like a blessing or a promise. My father will be awake soon. But if you want to learn more of my cooking secrets, I can teach you next week. And perhaps, if you're brave enough, we could move the cooking lesson inside. It's more comfortable, Ayame said, winking at him, with a boldness that surprised Naruto. Naruto laughed, his voice filled with the joy of affection. I'm the bravest shinobi in the leaf, Ayame-chan. And I'm not afraid of a dark kitchen. But you'll have to promise me that I'll teach you a domination jutsu in return. Ayame stood up, the moment of intimacy over, replaced by sweet anticipation. You'll have to earn that right, champion. Now, go. And don't make a sound. Naruto stood up and slipped back into the darkness. The secret ramen and Ayame's touch had healed him in a way that no one else could. Jutsu or training could. Ayame's affection was his new source of strength, the emotional anchor he needed to face Temari's passionate challenge and Anko's danger. The new moon and the passion contract. The night was new moon. The pitch darkness of the forest of death was a thick blanket that muffled all sound. It was the perfect setting for a duel that wouldn't be recorded on any quest scroll. Naruto Uzumaki, dressed in black training clothes, waited in the center of the clearing. His mind was perfectly clear, an achievement he owed as much to the Ayame's calm as to the Anko discipline. He wasn't nervous, he was focused. And sunshine silence broke the stillness. Temari of the desert. She appeared, her closed fan draped over her shoulder. She wore her usual ninja attire, but her aura was different. There was a focused intensity, the determination of a warrior ready for battle, and the excitement of a woman yearning to be dominated. Act 1, The Tactical Duel. You're just in time, Fox, Temari hissed, her voice low. My tactical briefing demands immediate review from your dominance maneuver. I swear I've trained to avoid contact. If you touch me, you'll lose. And I swear to you, Windflower, that I will not leave here without collecting my passion contract, Naruto replied, his voice deep and confident. We'll start on my signal. The battle begins. Temari moved. Not with the usual gust of wind, but with taijutsu pure, dodging and creating angles of attack, denying Naruto any line of approach. Her training had worked. She was agile, slippery, and used the closed fan like an extension of her arm, forcing Naruto to keep his distance. Naruto smiled. The battle wasn't about strength. It was about patience and sensory saturation. Temari threw her fan and unleashed a Kaze no Yaiba wind blade, slashing. Naruto didn't dodge. He used a cage bunshin as a decoy. The clone dissipated in the wind, but in doing so, it released a cloud of dust with a faint trace of Uzumaki chakra. You're littering the battlefield, Dobe. Temari growled, wiping away a trail of dust that had fallen near her eye. I'm not littering, I'm saturating, Naruto said, appearing to her left. Naruto threw 3 punches. Basic taijutsu. Temari skillfully blocked them, but Naruto's goal wasn't to hit her. It was force her into a close exchange. Temari's real challenge was that their residual chakra saturation combined with the darkness of the new moon was beginning to confuse her spatial sense. She had trained her physical movement, but not her sensory perception. Anko's lesson on the environmental pollution was bearing fruit. Act 2, The Proximity Trap. Naruto kept pushing, using his speed. Temari, trusting her futon at close range, she suddenly opened her fan. Open your guard, Fox. The gust of wind didn't reach her. Naruto had read her opening. Temari had focused too much on creating space. In the millisecond her fan opened, revealing her lower guard, Naruto moved. He didn't use a shunshine. He used the taijutsu de la Bestia break the distance. In a clean, brutal motion, Naruto slid under the fan. Contact domination had begun. Temari screamed, not in pain, but in surprise, as Naruto's body slammed into hers. He instantly spun her around and pinned her from behind, trapping her arms in the fan. "I've got you, Windflower. Your tactical surrender is imminent," Naruto whispered, his voice deep in her ear. Act 3, 15 minutes of domination. Temari fought like a trapped panther. Her pride wouldn't let her give in. She tried the Jinjutsu basic, the Kawarimi, pure strength. But Naruto's grip was a human seal. The grab Naruto's arms were steel pincers, powered by his control of the nine tails thanks to Anko. Her legs were immobilizing her, and Naruto's chest was suffocating her. The pressure of vigor, and there it was, the feeling that had driven her crazy since the first time. Naruto's body was pressed against her, and Temari felt the inescapable hardness and vigor of his masculine physique. The density of his body was a constant reminder of the endowment of his opponent and the domination from his grip. "Let me go, Uzumaki. This isn't shinobi. This is..." Temari panted, her voice breaking. "This is reality, Temari. And in reality, the strongest and boldest wins. You are my prisoner, and you must focus on my body. Feel my warmth, my strength. Feel the inevitability of defeat," Naruto whispered, his breath hot on her neck. Temari surrendered to the sensation. The sensory domination that Naruto had learned from Anko was mixed with that forbidden passion that he had ignited in her. Her body relaxed, not from defeat, but from unexpected pleasure. 10 minutes. 12 minutes. 14 minutes. Temari's gasps were no longer from exertion, they were from pure arousal. Time stood still. The contact was intimate, sweaty, and completely unabashed. Naruto held her, feeling the thump of her warrior heart against his back. 15 minutes. Temari collapsed against him, completely defeated. "I surrender. You stupid fox. You've won. You've completely dominated me." Naruto slowly released her. Temari staggered, her face red, her hair plastered to her forehead. The look she gave Naruto was no longer that of a warrior, it was one of undisguised desire. Act 4, the kiss of the contract and the quick farewell. Contract fulfilled. The arena's debt has been paid. And tactical surrender is a reproducible fact, Naruto said. His tone was victorious, but his voice was soft. Temari walked over to him. Her hands latched onto Naruto's neck, and she pulled him in for a fierce, deep and completely passionate kiss. The kiss was the taste of the desert and pent-up passion. Temari kissed him with an intensity that reflected the fury of her training and the humiliation of her defeat. It was a kiss that said it all: "I want you. And I hate that you beat me." They broke apart, both panting in the night air. "All night, huh?" Naruto asked, the mischief returning. Temari nodded, her voice calm now. They sat under a large tree. Naruto told her about Ayame, the comfort she gave him, and Temari told him about the loneliness of the desert, the fear of her clan. Emotional intimacy followed physical intimacy. As the sun began to creep purple over the horizon, Temari stood up, her face turning serious. "The sun is rising. I have to go. Salita Sunagakursen permisa for this duel, Fox. The trip was risky. If I'm discovered, it's treason. I need to return before my absence is recorded." "You risked so much, Windflower? For a simple tactical challenge?" Naruto asked. Temari gave him a look filled with desire. "It wasn't a simple challenge. It was my way of telling you that I'm not running away from you. I'm just postponing the next phase of our contract. I'll train, and the next time we meet, Fox, I won't make it so easy for you. But I like that my dom is such a man. Gifted in all its strategies." Temari gave him a quick kiss, a slow-burning promise. "Until next surrender, Naruto Uzumaki." Temari left with a shunshine silent, leaving Naruto alone in the forest, his mouth tasting of the desert and his body feeling the intensity of the warrior who challenged him to be more. The fox had dominated the falcon, and the romance was beginning. The Jinchuriki Chunin and the new arsenal. The morning light, which had witnessed Temari's farewell, found Naruto Uzumaki in the Hokage building, his body aching from the passion of the duel, but his mind fully alert. Accompanying him was Kakashi, whose single visible eye displayed a mixture of resignation and silent pride. Act 1, The Report and the Determination. Naruto recounted the events of the previous night, the Gaara crisis, with the precision of a strategist. He omitted, of course, the domination by contact with Temari, focusing only on Thea chakra restriction and Thea tactical alliance. Edo submit to the Jinchuriki. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, listened with a smoking pipe. Naruto, your intervention against Gaara and your display of ingenuity in the exam have revealed something we did not expect, the Hokage said, his voice grave. You are not just a child with Kyuubi chakra. You are a born strategist who uses his taijutsu and unpredictability to win. You're operating on a level that far exceeds your peers. Kakashi nodded. What he did with the Chidori Sasuke's and Gaara's sand weren't luck. It was a sensory saturation and chakra nullification tactic. He possesses combat analysis skills above the average Jonin. Naruto stood tall, without his usual boastfulness. My skills are based on deception, Hokage-sama. And to deceive elite ninja, I need a wider and more powerful arsenal than the one I have. Kage Bunshin. The Hokage nodded, recognizing the maturity in her tone. Act 2, The Chunin Seal. Hiruzen put down his pipe and looked directly at Naruto. You have gone from being the Dobi to Konoha's main tactical weapon in less than a month, Naruto. Your progress is undeniable. For the demonstration of valor, strategic skill, and your handling of a Jinchuriki crisis, and in the presence of your Jonin, I appoint you Chunin of Konohagakure no Sato with immediate effect. Naruto felt a surge of emotion. Not because of the title, but because of the recognition. The Hokage handed him Konoha's tactical vest, the symbol of his new rank. This rank comes with more responsibilities, Naruto. And more access. Access? Naruto asked, his strategic mind firing. Yes. You have access to the level librarian to the secret investigations section. Because of your Uzumaki lineage, you have special permission to examine Thefyu and Jatsudani Valkaja of your clan, which is sealed in the Leaf's vault, Hiruzen explained. Your father was a genius of Thefyu and Jutsu. If you can restore that knowledge, Konoha will have a new weapon. And you, the key to controlling your own chakra. Act 3, The New Arsenal, the Uzumaki clan vault. Naruto wasted no time. After putting on his Chunin vest, he headed to the secret vault, the heart of Konoha's hidden power. Access to Thefyu and Jutsu's section. It was a sacred experience. There were ancient scrolls, containment seals that thrummed with ancient energy. But Naruto only had eyes for one section, the Uzumaki clan of Ozushiogakuer. The scrolls were written in an archaic language, the flowing, swirling calligraphy of the Whirlpool clan. Naruto, with his Jinchuriki lineage and Uzumaki blood, felt an immediate resonance. These aren't just stamps for catching. They're stamps for control, amplify and reassign chakra, Naruto thought, feeling the energy flow through the symbols. The abundant and chaotic Uzumaki chakra was being wasted by the Gagyofu and Orochimaru. The key was not to break the seal, but to redirect Kyuubi's energy that the seal released erratically. Naruto found one particular scroll, written by his father, that caught his eye, Uzumaki Fuinjutsu, Kyokakaiho, Amplification Release. A one-touch seal designed to take a portion of restricted chakra, such as that of a Jinchuriki or a cursed seal, and amplify a non-elemental skill, such as taijutsu, speed, or basic healing, at the point of contact, before the main seal can restrain it again. Tactical purpose, to turn one's own seal into a source of power. Close combat. This is perfect, Naruto exclaimed. His father's technique would allow him to take the chakra that the Gagyofuin released chaotically every time he used his chakra, and focus Ito give him a power boost in his taijutsu. It would be the perfect complement to his domination by contact with Temari, or the sensory domination with Anko. Act 4, The New Arsenal and the Secret Promise. Naruto spent hours memorizing the diagrams. He wasn't just gaining power, he was gaining identity. He was no longer an orphan, but a descendant of a ninja powerhouse. He emerged from the vault, his Chunin vest over his shirt, his face tense with exertion. His arsenal had changed drastically: Power 1, domination by contact, taijutsu, speed, physical pressure. Perfected with Anko. Poder 2, Kyokakaiho, Nuevo Fuinjutsu, Amplified Taijutsu. The Kyuubi's chakra as a steroid shot for close combat. Power 3, Strategy and Deception, Cage Buttshine, Shame. His innate ability to read the battle. As they left, night was falling. Naruto knew he had to celebrate his promotion. Not with his teammates, but with his shelter. Naruto walked over to Ichiraku. Ayame greeted him with a smile and a look of pride. Chuchioji-san and I listened. Congratulations, Chunin-sama. That calls for the best ramen in the house. On the house, Ayame said, her affection more heartwarming than any medal. Naruto felt a surge of affection. His life was a constant duality, explosive danger and healing warmth. Thank you, Ayame-chan. But today, I need more than ramen. I need your advice. I have to learn to balance my new strength with my heart. And no one teaches me better than you, Naruto whispered, intending to remind her of the midnight date and the promise to take their relationship to a new level. The cooking lesson and the interruption of duty. The Ichiraku ramen stand was plunged into midnight darkness. Naruto, now a Chunin, slid into the back with newfound ease. His mind was still processing the diagrams off Fuinjutsu on the warmth of Temari's kiss, but his heart was searching for the anchor that only Ayame could offer. Act 1, Intimacy in the Kitchen. Ayame was waiting for him inside the small kitchen, where the air was warm and scented with spices. She was wearing a simple t-shirt and work pants. The atmosphere was one of forbidden, domestic intimacy. "Hello, Chunin-sama," Ayame whispered, her eyes shining with mischief and affection. "Just Naruto, please. And tonight's mission is to learn how to use this knife," Naruto said, pointing to a shiny chef's knife on the counter. "The last time I tried cooking, I almost burned my apartment down. I need your skill to master." Ayame laughed, a light, musical sound that was the antithesis of Anko's harsh laughter. "Cooking, Naruto-kun, is not mastered with strength. It is mastered with patience and affection. But I'd be happy to teach you a little of my secret cutting technique." Ayame positioned herself behind Naruto. It was the perfect teaching position, intimate and touching. Naruto felt the warmth of her mature body, soft but firm, pressing against his back. Ayame's clean, spicy scent enveloped him. She took Naruto's right hand, which held the knife, and slid her own hand over his to guide the movement. "Look, you have to be firm, but not tense. Guide the knife, don't force it. Like you're caressing the vegetable," Ayame whispered, her voice close to his ear. The contact was absolute. Ayame's chest pressed lightly against Naruto's back. The sensation was one of enveloping warmth which was pure refuge, a total contrast to the military and erotic pressure that Anko gave him. Act 2, The Confession in Softness. Naruto closed his eyes, not from pain, but from the pure sweetness of the sensation. The cooking lesson had turned into a lesson in keen. "I like this training technique, Ayame-chan," Naruto said, his voice deep. "It's the only way. You have to feel the rhythm, Naruto-kun. You have to let yourself go," Ayame said. She paused in her slashing motion. Their bodies were motionless, joined only by contact. "Naruto-kun," Ayame said, her tone turning serious. "Even though you're a Chunin, and very strong, I still sense danger around you. And that danger is growing stronger. Today, at the station, you seemed calm, but there was a dangerous fire in your eyes. That fire is what keeps me safe. And it's what allows me to protect my future," Naruto replied, his tone becoming more solemn. "And the one that keeps you from a normal life," Ayame concluded gently. She took her hand off the knife, but slid it gently down Naruto's arm. "I worry about you. But I can't ask you to give up your path." Naruto turned to face her, his hands reaching for her waist. "No, but you can be my anchor. My refuge. You're my only non-ninja truth in this world. And that makes you the most valuable person to me." Ayame leaned in, this time, the kiss wasn't just on her forehead. Their lips met gently. It was a kiss of affection, of comfort, and of a long-term promise. The opposite of Temari's wild intensity or Anko's defiance. "I want you to know that you always have a place here, Naruto-kun. In the kitchen. And in my heart," Ayame whispered, her breath coming in short gasps. Act 3, The Anbu Disaster. Just as Naruto was about to deepen the kiss, the gentle intimacy shattered. And sharp blow and quickly resounded at the back door of the stall, followed by an urgent, metallic whisper. "Naruto Uzumaki, Chunin. Message from the Hokage Emergency Level Beta. We require your presence at the infiltration headquarters immediately. Naruto and Ayame jumped apart, panic in their eyes. Anbu masked man was on the other side of the door, wearing the cat mask. Naruto recovered in an instant, his face going from intimate to professional. Anbu. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? Ayame asked, terror palpable in her voice. Naruto quickly put on his jacket. It's a mission, Ayame-chan. My new rank demands it. High level. I can't tell you anything. The Anbu messenger struck again. Chunin Uzumaki. This is a critical surveillance mission. Your camouflage and strategy skills are needed. Naruto looked at Ayame. Her face reflected fear and disappointment. Naruto, don't go. It's midnight. You just got here. I have to go, Ayame-chan. It's my duty. And if I don't go, someone else will go into the darkness, and maybe never come back, Naruto said, his tone firm. He approached her and took her face in his hands. He gave her a quick kiss, but one filled with a promise of return. I promise I'll come back. And don't worry. I'm learning to be strong. So I can come back to you. Naruto left through the back door, leaving Ayame alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the scent of Shigure no Ai ramen and the harsh reality of shinobi life. She understood that Naruto's life couldn't be normal. She was his refuge, but danger would always knock at his door. Act 4, The Game and the Strategy. Naruto ran alongside the Anbu, who guided him across the rooftops towards the barracks. What's the objective, Anbu? Naruto asked, his mind already in strategy mode. Surveillance and containment. A group of renegade ninja has been tracked near the Fire Nation border. Your mission, Chunin Uzumaki, is to go with a small infiltration team and verify if they are related to Orochimaru. His ability to go unnoticed is the key. Ironic. The boy who was screaming for attention was now sent on a mission that relied on his ability to be a shadow. Ayame gives me peace. Anko gives me the fire to fight. Temari gives me the challenge to grow. I need to balance this. And I need the mission money to pay for my secret ramen, Naruto thought, feeling the weight of his new rank and the urgency of duty. The night promised to be long, and his Fuinjutsu would be the only thing between him and death. The Fuinjutsu of infiltration and the price of betrayal. The infiltration team was small and efficient, Naruto as the tactical leader, the youngest Chunin and the only one capable of operating under the chakra radar, and 2 experienced Shinin specialized in tracking and genjutsu. The mission, to find a group of rogue ninja near the border who might be associated with Orochimaru. Act 1, The Infiltration and the Kyokaiho. Midnight, which had been sweet in Ayame's kitchen, now felt cold and treacherous. Naruto used his Kage Bunshin to explore the routes ahead, subtly dispersing them. The strategy of information saturation was his strong suit. They arrived at a rudimentary camp hidden in the thicket. Naruto, sensing that his fellow Shinin could be detected, took the initiative. Anko's strategy gave me the domination of my senses, Ayame gave me calm, and Fuinjutsu will give me the speed, Naruto thought, concentrating. He activated the seal he had memorized from his clan's scrolls Kyokaiho, amplification release. In an inconspicuous area, he touched the skin over the Gagiofun. The Kyuubi's chakra, which normally escaped chaotically, was redirected by the seal's temporary mark. No red cloak appeared, instead, Naruto's body felt light and dense. Inverted exclamation mark Kyokaiho, Velocity. The release of the restricted chakra wasn't spectacular, but it was efficient. Naruto felt incredible momentum off speed and agility. He moved like a shadow, faster than his normal taijutsu would allow, surpassing even his best Shunshin. Naruto slipped into the camp. His objective was reconnaissance, but one of the rogues, a Chunin-level tracker, spotted him. Intruder, shouted the renegade. Act 2, The Combat of Pure Strength. Naruto knew he couldn't use Kage Bunshin Rasengan, they would make too much noise. I had to end this with close combat and deadly speed. He touched his injured shoulder, feeling the tension. Inverted exclamation mark Kyokaiho, Fuerza. The Kyuubi's chakra, temporarily released by Minato's seal and amplified by the Fuinjutsu, flooded his muscles. Naruto faced the renegade with a flurry of taijutsu. He was stronger than ever. Every blow from his fist, even if it was only basic taijutsu, contained the amplified power of the fox. The renegade was unable to block the torrent of raw strength and speed, falling unconscious after an impact to his temple. The fight alerted two other renegades. They were ninjas from Doton and Katon. Catch him. He's a boy. Naruto faced them with a flurry of moves. Kyokukyo allowed him to move at breakneck speed. He dodged the dowry and approached the Katon ninja. His fist, charged with amplified Uzumaki chakra, struck the opponent's solar plexus. The ninja doubled over, his breath knocked out of him, and fell. The last renegade, with a poisoned kunai, was the most dangerous. Naruto understood that his Kyokukai would not last forever. The seal Gagyo Fuini was struggling to contain the energy. Act 3, The Fox's Despair and the Roar. The final renegade was skilled. He managed to dodge Naruto's final attack and made a shallow cut on Naruto's leg. Naruto tasted the poison. The pain and restriction of the Gagyo Fun exploded at the same time. The mind control was broken for an instant. Curse. Kyokukai collapsed. The seal's restriction took over. The Kyuubi's chakra was released uncontrollably. It wasn't a full cloak, but arid pulse of thought covered his hand and face for a second. The final renegade, frightened by the sight of the demonic chakra, froze. Naruto took advantage of the fear. With his fist wrapped in the red pulse of chakra, he slammed the ground with devastating force. The shockwave was enough to disorient the rogue. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Naruto, now regaining control, summoned a clone that materialized over the renegade and knocked him unconscious with a clean blow to the neck. The mission was complete. However, the Kyuubi's uncontrolled use of chakra was a reminder of the danger he still posed. Act 4, The Price of Betrayal. Naruto and his team left with the information. The renegades were searching for Orochimaru's old research sites and planning to retrieve biological samples. The connection was clear. Upon returning to Konoha, the mission was a resounding success. The team congratulated Naruto on his leadership and incredible taijutsu. However, upon arriving at the information headquarters, Naruto found a single scroll with a familiar serpentine seal Anko. The note was simple. Subject: The price of infiltration. I have felt the chaotic pulse of the fox. You use the Kyokukai too much. It's not stable, brat. You need my pain, my fire, and my domination to keep the fox from consuming you. Come see me tonight. The punishment for the uncontrolled use of your new power will be painful and long. Bring the scroll of the Kyokukai. It's time for me to teach you how to merge the snake and the fox. Your teacher, A. Naruto smiled, sensing Anko's threat. He had gained power, but he had lost control. The price of his newfound strength would be surrender to his teacher's intimate discipline. Ayame's calm had faded, and the fire of passion and power called to him once more. The fox sacrifice and the vow of silence. The cold morning light didn't find Naruto Uzumaki resting after his mission. Instead, it found him in the Hokage office's secret reading room, going over the details of his first success as a Chunin. Act 1, The Strategic Deception. Naruto reviewed his mental combat report. Yes, he had won. Yes, he had captured the rogues. And yes, his Kyokukai had been successful in increasing his strength and speed. But the victory was not clean. I made too much noise, Naruto thought, tapping the table softly. I had to use the Kyuubi in a wild pulse to scare the last ninja. A victory that depends on fear is not a cage-level victory. If that renegade had been a Jonin, he wouldn't have survived to tell the tale. He remembered the urgency in Ayame's eyes and the promise of return. If his mission lasted too long, or if it failed catastrophically, he wouldn't be able to return. He needed power that was swift, devastating, and silent. Kyokukai had amplified his existing abilities, but didn't create a new long-range offensive weapon. He needed an area of effect attack and a quiet mobility method. Act 2, The Revelation of the Prodigious Genius. Sitting in the silence of the library, his prodigious mind focused with a clarity he owed to the sensory domination Anko's. The focus was no longer on the seal, but on her nature of chakra. Challenge 1. Devastation from a distance, Futon. I am a ninja of Wind Futon. My mother, Kushina, was from Mazoshio Gakuer. My chakra is abundant. Why the Rasengan? My father used the pure form of chakra instead of my nature. The answer was obvious. The pure form of chakra was easier to control. Naruto had a bold idea, which mixed the wind devastation with the concentration of the Kyuubi/Uzumaki chakra, transform his Futon chakra into multiple, silent, and rapid lethal projectiles. Not a whirlwind, but deadly wind needles, thousands of them, capable of piercing through flesh and bone. An attack that instantly saturates the area. I need a month of absolute concentration just to understand chakra shaping, beyond the Rasengan. Challenge 2, Mobility, Sunshine and Fox Chakra. Naruto remembered the speed Pulso thought had given him the Kyokakaiho, but the seal Gagyofuin had restricted. I can't rely on the seal. I need to use the uncontrollable energy of the Kyuubi and the Uzumaki to create a mobility jutsu based on speed. A version of Sunshine, quick steps, that is instantaneous and silent. The energy must not be contained in a seal. It must be channeled by the will temple. This would require deep meditation on the flow of chakra, something only a Jinchuriki with the proper mental discipline could achieve. Act 3, The Vow of Silence. The conclusion was inescapable. To master these two cage-level techniques, his focus couldn't be divided. He couldn't afford distraction, nor solace. Naruto walked over to his desk and typed 2 messages. Message for Anko, the possible challenge, subject, lesson postponement and new arsenal. Sensei, my training will be suspended. I have discovered a critical weakness in my arsenal, the dependence on fear. I have started a personal project that requires total isolation and absolute concentration for a month. I can't let the fire of my training distract me. Upon my return, my new power will be the proof of my domination. I don't promise you that my new arsenal will be clean. I promise you that it will be lethal and fast. The punishment for the use of Kyokakaiho you'll have to wait. Message for Ayame, the necessary sacrifice, subject, duty and loyalty. Ayame-chan. I have been assigned a mission that will take me far, far away from Konoha, to an area where communications are impossible. It is a high-priority mission that demands my full attention and my sacrifice personal. My heart stays with you, in your kitchen and in your ramen. Don't worry about me, just wait. This is the sacrifice of the future Hokage. I'll be back in a month. And I promise the next cooking lesson will be the most intimate of all. Naruto delivered the messages to a messenger and a delivery ninja. He didn't write to Temari, he knew she was far away and that her silence would be the greatest provocation and a reminder of his defiance. Act 4, The Retreat in the Wind. Naruto picked up the futon scrolls, the diagram of the Kyokakaiho, and headed to an isolated cabin on the outskirts of the Forest of Death, a place he had used to train Cage Bunshine secretly. He sat in the center of the hut, staring at the scrolls. For the first time in months, there was no woman at his side, no looming challenge, no promise of ramen. A month of absolute solitude. A month of discipline. It is the sacrifice of the future hero of Konoha, Naruto said to himself, closing his eyes. He began to channel his wind chakra, visualizing the silent, deadly needles, the power of his ancestral clan merging with the speed of his inner demon. The path to power was lonely, but it was necessary for the protection of refuge and the domination of destiny. The fox had retreated to become an indomitable force. The weight, the fire and the tide. Naruto Uzumaki's decision to isolate himself for his training was a silent earthquake in the lives of the 3 women who shared his passion and destiny. A month seemed like an eternity when it came to the fox of Konoha. Ayame, the warmth of the void. The Ichiraku ramen stand felt too big and too quiet. Ayame, who normally found comfort in routine, felt Naruto's absence like a cold hollow at the counter. She had read Naruto's note a dozen times. This is a high-priority mission that demands my full attention and my sacrifice personal. Ayame was in the kitchen, carefully folding her father's apron. He's a Chunin now. A hero. But my heart doesn't want a hero, it only wants Naruto-kun. If that mission takes him so far away that he can't communicate, how dangerous must his path be? She remembered the Anbu's urgency, the fear in Naruto's eyes, and the promise that he would return. He had told her about loneliness, and now, in the name of his duty, he had imposed that loneliness on himself. Ayame picked up a ball of red and white wool. She began to knit, concentrating on the texture, not the pattern. A simple, thick scarf. He told me I'm his anchor. His refuge. If he's fighting fear and darkness, he needs something to remind him of warmth and calm. This scarf won't stop the enemy's jutsu, but it will remind him that there's a reason to return to the light. I hope this sacrifice is worth it and doesn't change him too much. She would finish a bowl of ramen, and reflexively prepare an extra bowl for the noisy Chunin. She would stare at the steaming bowl for a minute, then slowly unpack it, storing the secret spices until her favorite customer returned. Ayame consoled herself with the belief that if he was honest about his affection, he would keep his promise. She just had to wait, silently weaving her affection. Anko Mitarashi, the fire of discipline. Anko received the scroll from Naruto in her apartment. She read the justification with narrowed eyes. Personal project that requires total isolation and absolute concentration. When I return, my new power will be the proof of my domination. Anko's first instinct was fury. He had postponed his punishment, the culmination of his domination training, to pursue his own ambition. That damned arrogant brat. He challenges me even in absence. Does he think his new arsenal will be enough to master the snake chakra? If his training was genuine, he would have sought me out to train in human Fuinjutsu and stabilization. Anko stood up, her hands glowing with a faint dark green chakra. Her second instinct, however, was Toa teacher's pride. He didn't look for me because he's smart. He knows that if I confront him, Kyokaiho now, I will subdue him without mercy. He needs to refine his weapon before he dares to fire it at me. It is the mentality of a cage-level predator, to train alone until the weapon is perfect. The next day, Anko used her sensory chakra and slipped into the training area in the Forest of Death. She remained hidden, only observing the released energy. She felt the chakra waves. Futon chaotic and controlled overload of 9 tails and Kyokaiho. The training was brutal, constant and without distractions. Anko smiled, a dangerous snake smile. Good, Naruto. You are becoming the monster Konoha needs. If you come back stronger, if your new power is real, the next lesson in domination will be unforgettable. The price for your ambition will be that I subdue you with the same fire you used to create your arsenal. Prepare to be controlled, Chunin. I eagerly await your return. The wait was not torture, it was anticipation for the inevitable and most dangerous reunion. Temari of the desert, the intensity of rivalry. Temari didn't receive any notes. Naruto's complete silence after their passionate duel on the new moon was, to her, the greatest provocation. In Sunagakuer, Temari stood on her balcony, fan open in the warm breeze. Zoro has disappeared. The silence after total surrender is not forgetting, it is a declaration of war. He knows my pride compels me to improve. He knows that if he leaves and comes back stronger, my surrender will be even sweeter and more complete. She remembered the pressure on her waist, the vigor of his body against her back, and the kiss of surrender that had sealed a passion contract. He was cunning. He had given her a month to obsess over his defeat and his coming victory. Temari ordered her subordinates to intensify their training. It was no longer enough to master the futon. She focused on anti-domination taijutsu, creating microbursts of wind around his body to repel any contact grabs. A technique directly inspired by the pulse of Kyokaiho had felt. You're preparing for the ultimate duel, Uzumaki. And so I won't give you the ease I gave you last time. Next time, if you overpower me, it will only be after a fight that forces you to use all of your newfound strength. And when you do, the reward for your victory will be twice as intense. Return, Fox. I'm ready for the next assault. Her silence was a way of telling Naruto that she respected him enough not to distract him. Temari's intensity was a promise that the next encounter would be an explosion of futon and passion. The air in the isolated cabin was heavy, laden with the scent of wet earth and concentrated chakra. Naruto Uzumaki had imposed a month-long exile on himself, knowing that time was both his enemy and his only ally. He had chosen the most difficult path, creating a cage-level arsenal from scratch. Naruto sat on the wooden floor, his eyes closed in meditation. He put aside the scrolls of Fuinjutsu for a moment. Destruction could wait, mobility was the key to survival and domination. The goal was simple, but the execution was almost impossible. A silent mobility jutsu. I needed a speed higher than that of the Sunshine Kakashis, but without the trace of chakra, and that could be used instantly, without hand seals. The only source of energy with that boost capacity was the Kyubi chakra. Naruto concentrated his will. He pushed the Uzumaki chakra blocked by the Gagyo-fun, asking him to make a space for the red power of the fox to flow. A wave of warm energy rose in his core. Naruto tried to guide the chakra to his legs and eyes. He wanted reflexes so fast he could see the world in slow motion, and legs that could cross the land of fire in a flash. The experiment failed. The red chakra was in a river, It was a tidal wave. The fox's uncontrollable energy, sealed by Orochimaru's seal, knew no restraint. The chakra spread rapidly through his skin. Naruto's eyes turned red and slanted. The flesh on his face rippled. A stifling heat washed over him, and the three chakra tails, thick and visible, manifested behind him in an instant. "Damn it!" Naruto shouted, his voice echoing with a beastly double rumble. The power was immense, terrifying, but completely useless for the infiltration and subtlety he needed. With that uncontrolled energy, he was a beacon of danger, not a shinobi. He was forced to break concentration, pushing brute force toward the seal, feeling the pain of the Gagyo-fuin as he struggled to contain the beast again. He collapsed, sweating profusely. His mind was exhausted. Kyuubi chakra, it wasn't just a simple engine, it was a nuclear bomb. First physical control, then energy. Naruto stood up. He left the cabin, and with Kage Bunshin he cut down 3 trunks from young trees. He tied them to his arms and legs with ninja climbing ropes. They were ridiculously heavy, designed to slow him down and drain his stamina exponentially. He began to run around the perimeter of the forest. At first, he was slow and clumsy. The fox's strength, even with the seal, was restrained, and the weight of the logs was torture. His speed was barely that of a normal Genin. Naruto didn't stop. Day and night, using clones to stay alert, he ran and moved. By the third day, his muscles screamed, but his mind had sharpened from the self-imposed torture. It was in the middle of a race that the idea of his genius prodigy glow. If I couldn't control the Nine Tails in its entirety, why try? The Kyokukaiho, it worked by taking pulses and amplifying the force at a point of contact. The solution was not the total liberation of the chakra, but the extreme and temporary channeling at critical points of your body. Naruto stopped, dropping the logs. Concentrate all the chakra of the beast and the Uzumaki in their feet and fists. The result would be a speed and momentum of movement so great that it would resemble teleportation, a silent and destructive race. Taijutsu, it wouldn't just be amplified, it would reach a ridiculous level, capable of breaking Jonin-level defenses with a single blow. The problem of the silent mobility had become a problem of extreme channeling. Naruto knelt. He forgot his fear of the Kyuubi. He used his will to summon the chakra, not to release it, but to direct it through the veins of his legs and arms, to the exit point in his feet and wrists. The first attempt was a spectacular failure. Energy pooled in his foot, making him feel as if he were about to explode. His foot hit the ground, creating a small crater and releasing a sonorous burst of chakra. The second attempt was better. The sound was quieter, the speed immense. The third attempt. Naruto ran for a short distance, his body moving with invisible speed and without sound. The Kyuubi's chakra was contained in a dense red aura around his feet and fists, like boots and gloves of pure energy. The speed was instantaneous. The silence, almost perfect. Naruto had found the path to the development of his silent mobility jutsu, a technique that was not based on the elemental transformation or the seal, but in the domination of the will about demonic energy. Now that I had the foundation for mobility and strength, the month of sacrifice could begin. The next phase, devastation. Naruto's self-imposed isolation was governed by the strictest discipline. He had divided his month into 2 campaigns, the first fortnight dedicated to the silent mobility and the second, to the wind devastation. It was the 5th day, and the young Chunin watched his progress with frustration. The control of the extreme channeling the Kyuubi's chakra system was a chimera. Despite the progress, the speed was sporadic and the sound of the chakra clash was too loud. At this rate, I'll need 6 months, not 2 weeks, Naruto grumbled, feeling the pressure of Ayame's waiting and promising to surrender to Anko and Temari. The strategist mind that had blossomed in the Chunin exams gave him the most obvious and riskiest solution: Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. His shadow clone jutsu, it didn't just create physical copies, it returned the experience and exhaustion to the mind of the original. Using it to train the subtleties of the Kyuubi's chakra control was a gamble that could kill him from mental exhaustion or the uncontrolled release of the beast. Naruto knelt down, concentrating. Initially, he summoned 200 clones. The chakra explosion was violent. 200 Narutos, they threw themselves into the task of channeling the red chakra into their limbs. The exhaustion was almost instantaneous. The headache that came with the return of the experience knocked him to the ground, and the Gagyo-fun, it vibrated dangerously. It lasted only a couple of hours before mental fatigue forced him to disperse the rest. The limit should be efficiency, not quantity. Naruto recalculated. 30 clones. A number that allowed him to train all day without the headache becoming debilitating, ensuring the experience flowed gradually and steadily. Thus the following days passed. 30 Narutos. They moved through the forest in a constant ballet of failed concentration. Kyuubi chakra had pooled in their fists and feet, creating red flashes that extinguished with a loud crack. Most of the clones lost control and vanished in puffs of smoke. Feedback. Zoro's chaotic. Naruto, the original, experienced thousands of failures every hour, the pain of the energy buildup, the sonic boom of released chakra, the tremor of transformation. It was the mental discipline he learned from Anko which allowed him not to go crazy. It was the emotional calm received from Ayame which allowed him not to give in to frustration. Day number 10, the culmination of the will. The first 2 weeks were almost over. The fatigue of 10 days of clone training had carved lines of maturity into Naruto's face, but his eyes shone with an iron will. In the center of a clearing, Naruto sat in deep meditation. He allowed the 30 clones to concentrate for the last time. The experience of thousands of hours of failure had been synthesized in the mind of the original. The path to channeling was clear. Naruto directed the flow of the Kyuubi's chakra. He did not fight the flow, molded. The chakra was not released, it was content in the palms of his hands and the soles of his feet, forming a dense, pulsating layer of red energy. This time, there was no sound, just ominous silence and the vibration of the earth beneath their feet. The clones dispersed in a single puff of smoke. Naruto stood up. The chakra was contained. 5 minutes complete with perfect concentration. Naruto looked at a large oak tree 15 meters away. He inhaled. In an imperceptible instant, Naruto disappeared. It was not a sunshine with a trail of smoke. It was instantaneous movement. A space deformation. He crossed the 15 meters in less than a second. The air around him whistled. Naruto punched the oak tree trunk with his closed fist. He didn't stop. His foot, channeled with the same energy, struck the trunk. The impact wasn't a sound of wood breaking. It was a dull roar of concentrated energy. The oak tree split in half. The top slid off and fell to the ground, the impact zone looking like it had been struck by the sheer force of the 9 tails. The surrounding earth cracked, following the path of the blow. Naruto landed softly on the other side of the log, the red chakra slowly dissipating from his fists and feet, once again being contained by the Gagyo-Fuin and his own will. Naruto stood still, watching the devastation he had created with his own body. I've done it. I've discovered one of the greatest mobility jutsus in ninja history. This isn't just speed. It's the speed of the 3 tails and the striking force of the beast, but completely under my control, with my own will. The silent mobility. It was a weapon of dominance. It could appear and strike with ridiculous force, finishing off any opponent in a single assault, giving them no time to react or defend themselves. He would no longer have to rely on his demonic visage to frighten. Silence and devastating power would be his new terror. The sacrifice of 10 days of madness with the clones had been worth it. Now, Win's devastation remained. The fox was ready to become an indomitable force. The limit of willpower in the ramen dream. The next 3 days after the initial success of the silent mobility were not dedicated to the creation of new one's jutsus, but to the tyranny of repetition. Naruto already knew the capacity for mass destruction he had unlocked. Now, his enemy was the enemy and the discipline. Naruto's goal was to surpass the limit imposed by his own physiology and by Orochimaru's seal. Every additional minute of control over the Kyuubi chakra in its extremities. It was a victory over madness and lack of control. Training was a slow agony. Naruto didn't use clones for this. Control had to be personal and unique. He stood in the center of the clearing, summoning energy to his feet and fists, feeling the unbearable heat of concentrated chakra. His upper and lower limbs, previously only hardened by training, were now covered in visible burns. The skin had cracked and reddened from constant exposure to demonic energy. Despite his accelerated healing factor, the chakra was so intense that the skin couldn't repair itself fast enough. The pain was a constant scream beneath the surface of his consciousness. Naruto breathed with the rhythm Anko had taught him, transforming the pain into a latent energy, a concentration of will. He ignored the burning pain in his feet, focusing instead on the mental image of a red vortex swirling in the center of his chakra, stable and perfectly contained. 10 minutes. The air around him vibrated. The burns pulsed. Naruto fought the urge to disperse the energy, to surrender to the relief. 15 minutes. His concentration wavered. The image of Temari, defiant and sensual, entered his mind, reminding him that this resistance was necessary to dominate her. He used it as a driving force. 20 minutes. The pain was a silent hell. Only the promise of the future Hokage to protect the peace Ayame offered him kept him from letting go. Fatigue mounted throughout the 14th day. The 2 weeks of silent movement had been completed. Naruto was on his last attempt of the day. His body was on the verge of collapse. He fought the cold sweat and the trembling of his muscles. His will was the only barrier between madness and control. 1 more minute. Another minute. Finally, time stopped. The chakra dissipated. Naruto stood, his body lifeless, but his mind victorious. 25 minutes. He had done it. He could maintain silent mobility in a state of perfect control for 25 minutes, more than enough time to eliminate any threat. The pain in his limbs was overwhelming, the fatigue total. Naruto fell face first onto the soft earth of the training ground with a thud. He didn't try to move. He didn't feel the pain, only the sweet release of rest. A slow, weary smile spread across his soot and sweat-covered face. He didn't think about Thefyu and Jutsu or in the next battle. His mind, on the threshold of sleep, sought the only refuge he knew. He imagined the face of Ayame. Ayame-chan. I could really use your smile and your ramen right now. The love of the downpour. The warmth of your cooking. I need that refuge more than I need the Kyuubi strength. The image of the peaceful kitchen, the feel of Ayame's hand guiding his, and the taste of the secret ramen became the balm of his subconscious. With that peaceful fantasy, the Chunin of the leaf, the wielder of the demon, fell into a deep, well-deserved sleep. The awakening, the wind and the dragon's blood. The morning sun filtered through the canopy of the forest of death. Naruto woke up on the ground, the earth cold beneath his face. The exhaustion of 14 days of training for the silent mobility he was a heavy burden. His fists and feet were burning under the crude bandages he had applied. He stood up, his knees creaking. The first fortnight was over. 14 days left, Naruto muttered, not wasting a second on self-pity. Phase 2 of his exile training began when devastation the objective, to create Thefuten, lethal needles. A technique that would mix chakra molding with the destructive capacity of the Futen pure, capable of eliminating multiple threats at a distance with precision and without the noise of a Rasengan. Naruto immediately summoned 30 shadow clones. The limits of his mental training allowed him to operate efficiently without collapsing. The clone's mission was a torture of form. First challenge, Futon molding wind chakra is indomitable. The clones were to take the chakra from Futon and shape it, not as a broad blast or a cutting blade, but as a dense thorn, sharpened to the molecular level. The initial results were disastrous. The clones tried to concentrate the chakra. The pure wind energy was released in asonic chaos, cutting only the air or bending the leaves of the trees. The feedback of thousands of failures hit Naruto's head. It was a stabbing pain, the frustration of an element that refused to be tamed. Naruto, the original, took a thick branch and looked at it. The technique of the lethal needles. It can't just be pure futon. It has to be like a spider's thread, invisible, but lethally taut. I need the density of the Uzumaki chakra to stabilize the wind. This was the key, to use the chakra Uzumaki, known for its longevity and endurance, such as the scaffold in which to build the sharp shape of the needle's futon. The clones changed their strategy. Now, each focused on 2 steps, channel a tiny thread of Uzumaki chakra almost invisible, with a slightly reddish hue, through his fingers. Wrap that thread with the futon, using the Uzumaki chakra as the internal guide to give the needle shape and density of a solid projectile. The second phase of training was more successful, but no less painful. When form failed, the pure futon exploded in the clone's hands, leaving thin, deep cuts. The pain returned to the original. Naruto looked at his hands, which now had the scars from the mobility burns and new cut lines from the wind. If I wanted to make a Rasen shuriken, I'd use a handful of clones. But for the needles, I need a level of control that only the genius of a medic ninja or the will of a Kage can achieve. This is much harder than just hitting hard. Naruto realized that if he wanted devastation, he had to engage his mother's energy. The dragon's blood, Kushina's bloodline, the bloody habanero, had to flow to give stability to the wind. The 17th. 3 days in the devastation. A clone screamed internally: inverted exclamation mark control. Naruto, the original, opened his eyes. He looked at the clone's hand. The clone had managed to condense the futon around the Uzumaki thread. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, but a slight hissing sound indicated its presence. It was a lethal needle the size of a fingernail, rotating at high speed. "Now, shoot it," Naruto ordered mentally. The clone aimed at a rock 10 meters away. With a quick flick of the wrist, the needle was launched. The sound was a soft click. The invisible needle struck the rock. It didn't break it, but it left a tiny, perfectly clean hole in the surface. The experience returned to Naruto. The feeling of control was euphoric. The wind devastation was no longer a fantasy, it was a reality. Excellent. If 30 clones fire 30 needles per second, the devastation will be total and silent, Naruto smiled. Creating a single projectile was key. Now, the clone's task was to perfect the form and increase the volume. Training for the next 11 days would be a constant barrage of invisible needles, turning the surrounding earth into a sieve. The future Hokage was creating an arsenal worthy of his lineage and his ambition. The Archer of the Wind and the Last Sacrifice. Training with clones had given Naruto the theoretical understanding of the wind devastation, but the fine control needed to cast multiple lethal needles simultaneously, using only his own chakra, was the ultimate test of his mastery. The technique required dividing his own attention to mold the shape of 5 identical projectiles, while maintaining futon pure stable with the Uzumaki thread. Naruto set himself an ambitious goal for the last few days: 5 lethal needles fired at the same time. A number sufficient to annihilate a squadron without effort. He stood in front of a line of 5 young trees. Day 1. Frustration in form. Naruto concentrated his will, mentally splitting his chakra for manipulation. He managed to form and launch a lethal needle's perfect energy, which pierced the first tree with a soft snap. However, in its attempt to create the second, the energy went out of control. Just a misshapen shape and figure of futon appeared next to the first, dissipating with a useless hiss. The effort left him exhausted. 1 out of 5. Not enough, not devastation, Naruto hissed, wiping away his sweat. Day 2 to 4. The fight for the second shell. The days wove together in a cycle of intense concentration and painful failures. Naruto ignored the stinging pains in his limbs, burned by silent mobility, focusing his pain on the molding. The second projectile was his psychological barrier. Finally, on day 4, with a mental effort that nearly caused him to faint, he managed to form and fire 2 needles. The second one deflected slightly, but hit the second tree. 2, he gasped, falling to his knees. It was a victory, but the effort was unsustainable for real combat. He needed it to flow effortlessly. Day 5 to 12, the unstoppable rise. The progress was incremental and brutal. Naruto's mind, now a disciplined machine, adapted to the division of tasks. He used the breathing technique Anko taught him to calm the madness of Nine-Tails and the peace that Ayame had given him to anchor his focus. On the 10th day, he shot 3 needles. By day 12, the effort was monumental, but he managed to score 4 perfect points. He was 1 step away from the finish line, but exhaustion was a barrier. Day 13, the promise fulfilled. Naruto stood up, knowing it was his last real chance before he had to focus on accuracy. He stood, his posture one of absolute stillness. He summoned the flow of his deepest chakra. The Uzumaki thread extended from his hand. Futon wrapped it up. Naruto did not split his mind. He multiplied it. In a single, fluid movement of his wrist, 5 lethal needles, perfect, invisible, and deadly, they materialized in the air in front of his palm. It was the quietest, most dangerous sound Naruto had ever made. The shinobi aimed. Not at the center, but at 5 different points from the tree line. Futon. The 5 needles were fired. The air was rent with 5 soft, simultaneous clicks. 5 tiny, but perfectly circular LS appeared on each of the 5 trunks. The devastation was silent, clean and absolute. Success was liberation. The concentrated energy dissipated. Naruto's body, at the limit of its endurance, gave way. He fell back onto the ground, his lungs gasping for the air of victory. He looked up at the blue sky, an expansive peace that contrasted with the hell of his training. I had done it. A weak, euphoric laugh escaped his lips. The smile of a warrior who had conquered his own weakness. I did it. I did it, Naruto whispered. A solitary tear, a mixture of physical pain and pure happiness at the victory of her will, rolled down her cheek and was lost in the forest dust. The month of sacrifice was almost complete. His silent mobility was ready. Her wind devastation was ready. He only had 1 day left. 1 day to practice precision off the needles and Thielen and control off their quick movement. And then, the reunion. The return, the refuge and the challenge of the serpent. Naruto's last day was a blur of precision. Futone and accelerated healing. By the end of the month, his body was stronger than ever, his burns had reduced to barely visible scars, and his shinobi mind was as sharp as the needles he could now throw. He was an indomitable force. Naruto didn't waste a second. He ran straight to Konoha, not to the Hokage Tower or the training grounds, but to the refuge he had longed for in his dreams. The position of Ichiraku Ramen. It was open. The warm, familiar light spilled onto the street. Naruto walked in, his heart beating with a mixture of exhaustion and hope. I'm back. Ayame-chan. A large bowl of miso, please, he shouted, breaking the silence he had maintained for a month. Ayame was wiping down the counter. She looked up, and the dish towel fell from her hands. Her face lit up with such pure joy that it almost made Naruto stagger. Naruto-kun. You're back. Ayame didn't hesitate. She circled the bar and, ignoring the presence of her father or the occasional clientele, launched herself into a deep and loving hug. The contact was not one of training or wild passion, it was the consolation of return. Naruto hugged her tightly, feeling the softness and warmth of her body. The exhaustion from the month of training dissipated with that simple act of affection. I missed you, Ayame-chan. More than anything, he whispered in her ear. Ayame pulled away, her eyes wet. She smiled from the background, quickly preparing the ramen. Ayame pulled a simple scarf, knitted in red and white wool, from under the counter. This is for you. I started knitting it the day you left. So you don't forget the warmth of home, she said, in a tender tone. Naruto put on his scarf. The simple gesture was the anchor it had he had been looking for. He sat at the counter as Ayame served him the ramen. It wasn't just miso. It was the shigure no ai, his secret midnight ramen, prepared in daylight. You don't have to worry anymore. My arsenal is ready. I promise that from now on, my missions will be quick, Naruto said, burying his face in the steam. The snake challenge. Just as Naruto was about to take his first sip, the stall door opened with a force that made the frame shake. Anko Mitarashi came in. He didn't shout, he didn't hiss, his entrance was a silent statement of authority. His dark eyes scanned the scene, the scarf, the steaming ramen, Naruto's smug face, and the warmth of Ayame's embrace. His presence was cold, and the air was charged with a tension of contained danger. Naruto Uzumaki. My patience has run out, Anko said, her voice low, like the brush of scales. You dared to postpone my lesson and my punishment for your personal training. I've waited a month. The debt will be paid. Come with me now. I want to see what kind of antics you've cooked up in your hut. Naruto froze. The half-eaten bowl of ramen was the perfect symbol of his dilemma. The comfort of his refuge was being challenged by the danger of his calling. Anko-sensei, my training was a success. We can discuss repaying the debt tomorrow. I just arrived, Naruto began. Tomorrow is too late. You challenged yourself, and now you challenge me. The price of your new power is control, and I'm the only one who can give it to you. Get up and come, Anko demanded, her hand unconsciously touching her curse mark. The shelter intervention. It was then that Ayame did something worthy of the ninja she never was. She straightened behind the bar, her face sweet but firm. The kitchen light, which always softened her, now made her look like a guardian. Ayame did not have jutsus, but he had a will that rivaled any leaf ninja. Excuse me, Mitarashi-san, Ayame said, her voice surprisingly steady and calm, a contrast to Anko's dangerous self. Naruto-kun just returned from a secret mission that exhausted him to the limit. He's here to eat his ramen and rest. Anko turned her head toward Ayame, her dark eyes narrowing. The gesture was a silent warning that would have made any Genin shudder. This is shinobi business, civilian. Stay out of it, Anko hissed. Ayame didn't move. She placed a protective hand over the bowl of ramen. This is a ramen stand, Mitarashi-san. Here, my word is law. Naruto-kun is tired. He'll eat his ramen first, without rushing. You'll have to wait outside the stand. And when you're done, Naruto-kun will decide if he wants to go with you for your lesson or not. He's no longer a student you can drag around. He's a chunin." The silence was absolute. Tucci paused while washing dishes, watching his daughter with quiet pride. Anko, the feared master of torture, the only kunoichi who toyed with Orochimaru's danger, encountered for the first time an unwavering authority based on kindness. Ayame's challenge had put Naruto in an impossible position, but had given him the dignity of choice. Anko clenched her jaw. There was a mixture of fury at the challenge and twisted admiration for the civilian's audacity. She understood Ayame's power, the only woman who could challenge Naruto to be a man, not a weapon. "Fine," Anko spat, her voice dripping with venom. "I'll give him 10 minutes to eat his food. And then, Chunin, you'll have your choice. But if you make me wait any longer, the price of your debt will be triple." Anko turned and walked out of the stall, standing on the street, arms crossed, a guardian snake waiting for its prey. Naruto looked at Ayame, his eyes filled with wonder and affection. She had just defended him from the most dangerous woman in Konoha, Ayame-chan. "You shouldn't have done that," Naruto whispered. "Yes, I should have. Now eat your ramen. You earned it," she said, with a tender smile. Naruto dug his chopsticks into his ramen. He had 10 minutes to decide if the affection of his refuge was worth 3 times the pain that awaited him with his teacher's dangerous passion. The fox was back, and the game of power and passion had turned up a notch. The vow of control and the triple punishment of the serpent. Naruto Uzumaki was sitting at the ramen stand, with Ayame's scarf around his neck. Shigure no eye had burned his mouth, but his mind was cold and calculated. Anko waited outside. "Thank you, Ayame-chan. This is the best ramen I've ever eaten," Naruto said, finishing the bowl in one final sip. Ayame looked at him with eyes filled with sadness, but with deep understanding. She knew Naruto wouldn't choose calm. "Naruto-kun. Please don't go," Ayame whispered. Naruto stood up and leaned over the bar, gently kissing her forehead, right where her hair parted. "I must go, Ayame-chan. My silent mobility and my lethal needles, they are weapons of immense power, but dangerous. Only Anko-sensei, who taught me the discipline of pain, and who knows the darkness of Thefyu and Jutsu humans, can you help me stabilize this? If I get out of control, I could endanger Konoha and you. I must go. This is the vow of control." Ayame closed her eyes, accepting her fate. "Come back to me, Naruto-kun. Don't lose yourself in the fire she's fanning." Naruto nodded, his face serious. He headed for the door, stepping out into the darkness of the street, where Anko's tense figure was waiting for him. The arsenal test. Anko didn't say a word. She simply turned and walked toward the forest of death. Naruto followed her. The silence between them was thick, filled with unspoken defiance. They arrived at the training clearing. "The triple punishment begins now, brat," Anko hissed, turning sharply. "Show me the Kyokukai you dared to use it recklessly, now prove to me you can control it." First test, stability of mobility. Naruto activated the silent mobility the Uzumaki/Kyuubi chakra concentrated in his feet and fists. "Move," Anko ordered, unsheathing a kunai with impressive speed. Naruto moved. The silence was broken by the hiss of Anko's kunai, which sliced through the air where Naruto had stood a moment before. He danced around her with astonishing speed, leaving only after images. Anko attacked with a flurry of poisoned kunai. Naruto used the silent mobility to dodge, controlling the energy with centimeter precision, without letting the pulse of the nine-tails made it explode. "Perfect control," Anko admitted, with a savage grin. "Your taijutsu is Jonin level, brat. Punishment number 1 is settled." Second test, the concentration of devastation. "Now you wind devastation, aim for that great oak tree," Anko ordered. "If you throw just one needle, the debt doubles. Show me the power that's worth my weight." Naruto concentrated his chakra, molding the 5 lethal needles simultaneously. Anko moved dangerously close, observing the gathering. "If you fail, I promise I'll burn that scarf," Anko hissed, challenging his approach. Naruto ignored the threat and danger of proximity. He fired. 5 soft clicks. 5 clean, precise holes in the oak. "Impressive," Anko laughed, her voice filled with ecstasy from the power. "You've achieved a high-level assassination technique." Punishment number 2, settled. Third test, Human Fuinjutsu, the ultimate contact. Now, the final, and most important, punishment, Anko said, her tone turning intimate and dangerous. You need a purge of the tension in your chakra. The danger isn't outside, it's inside you. And I'm the only one who can take that energy. Anko launched herself at him. This time, the movement wasn't an attack, but a grip of passion. She pinned him from behind, pressing her body against Naruto's, just like in their first lesson. But this time, Anko was demanding the exchange of chakra. Naruto, release the devastation pulse in the grip. I'll take that tension off you so you don't self-destruct. Surrender to my control, Anko panted. Naruto, feeling the strain of his new power and the pain of training, surrendered to the need. The pulse of the Kyuubi/Uzumaki's chakra flowed toward the contact. Anko absorbed the surge. The chakra exchange was an intense discharge of passion and pain. The resistance of the heart. The training ended with Anko and Naruto collapsing on the grass. She was the first to recover. Anko, her face flushed and her breath ragged from the energy exchange, approached Naruto. She slid her lips down his neck, with hungry intensity, moving her hand to undo the zipper of his workout clothes. "You're mine, Chunin," Anko whispered, her voice husky with desire and the pride of having mastered her power. "The debt has been paid. And now, collect your prize." Naruto, however, stopped her. His hand, still tender from the burns, gently placed itself over hers. "Anko. Stop it," Naruto said, his voice firm. Anko stopped, her gaze meeting his. Her dark eyes were filled with a mixture of fury and confusion. "What's wrong, brat?" Anko hissed, her anger palpable. "Don't tell me you fell in love with a woman who cooks ramen? That you've softened in the warmth of the kitchen?" Naruto pulled away from her, sitting on the grass. He looked at the red and white scarf Ayame had given him, now hanging around his neck. "Don't talk about Ayame like that," Naruto corrected her, his tone protective. "She's the only one who's ever listened to me and understood me without demanding pain or danger. It's not that." Naruto ran his hand through his hair, exhausted from the month of training and the intensity of the moment. I need to think. I don't know if what we have is the power domination or something else. I don't know if having this today, after a month of isolation, is the right thing to do. I just came back. I need to understand my new power and my place before I can make a decision about my heart." Anko looked at him. Her frown slowly relaxed. The anger gave way to grudging understanding. She understood the need to absolute control before the action. "You're an idiot, Naruto," Anko sighed, standing up and crossing her arms. "But at least you're an idiot who's learned control." She pointed at him with a finger. "You have my blessing to think. But don't make me wait too long, Chunin. Or next time, dominance will be non-negotiable." Anko disappeared into the night. Naruto was left alone, physical exhaustion and emotional strain overwhelming him. He had defeated the Nine-Tails in his mobility and Anko in her discipline. Now, only one challenge remained. The broken promise, ramen, and the shadow of Akatsuki. Dawn found Naruto Uzumaki staggering back to Konoha. His body, though healed by the factor of Nine-Tails, was on the ropes because of Anko's test. But his heart dragged him back to the one unchanging truth in his life, the need for comfort. Naruto headed straight for Ichiraku's. This time, the stall was closed, but a soft light shone in the kitchen. He knocked on the back door. Ayame. She opened the door, her face initially tense with concern, but softening at the sight. She was wearing a simple robe. Seeing the lines of exhaustion on her face, she knew how intense the lesson with Anko had been. "You're back," Ayame whispered, her eyes filled with relief. "I always do," Naruto replied. Interrupted intimacy. Ayame invited him into the kitchen, a space that was already a sanctuary for them. She poured him a cup of warm herbal tea, not ramen, to calm his system. "She didn't hurt you, did she? She didn't leave any marks?" Ayame asked, her gaze wandering to his neck. "No. Her domination was mental, Ayame-chan. It was a test of my control over the new power. But you were right. She fans the fire, and I must learn not to get burned," Naruto confessed. Ayame approached him. Her gentleness was the perfect balm for Anko's invisible scars. She placed her hands on his cheeks. "I love you, Naruto-kun. And I don't want your hero path to cost you your soul," Ayame whispered, pulling him towards her. The kiss was tender, Deep, a reaffirmation of their affection after the intensity and danger. There was no rush, only the certainty of two souls connecting through warmth and promise. But happiness never lasted in Naruto's world. A loud, familiar cough echoed from the hallway. Tucci, the ramen master, had woken up. He entered the kitchen, his hair disheveled and his face serious. "Naruto Uzumaki," Tucci said, not sounding angry, but solemn. Naruto and Ayame quickly separated, both blushing. "I'm sorry, Tucci-oji-san. I didn't mean to," Naruto stammered, reverting back to his clumsy Genon self for a second. Tucci raised his hand, stopping him. "Enough, boy. I saw you defend Konoha. I saw the fire in you, and I saw how my daughter looks to you. You're the village's hero and the man she chose. I have no problem with you being my daughter's fiancé," Tucci declared, with a warm gaze that surprised Naruto. "But," the ramen master continued, his tone turning harsher, "Ayame is weaving her life for you. She is her refuge. But she cannot live in eternal uncertainty. You have to make up your mind and stop chasing snakes. I don't want to see my daughter suffer, waiting for a man who doesn't know whether he wants peace or danger. If she's your anchor, behave like an anchor." The blow was more effective than any blow Anko could have had. Tucci wasn't asking for Naruto to stop being a ninja, he was asking for choose a priority. "I understand, Tucci-oji-san. And I promise that I'm going to make a decision," Naruto said, with renewed solemnity. The path had narrowed. Akatsuki's message of wind and shadow. Before Naruto could process the seriousness of his conversation with Ayame and Tucci, a faint hissing sound echoed through the air. It wasn't a jutsu, but a messenger falcon which landed on the windowsill. It had a coded message tied to its paw. Naruto recognized it immediately. The code was letter to Temari. Naruto opened the letter. It wasn't a duel challenge. It was a call for help, written with an urgency bordering on panic. "To the Leaf Fox, immediately delivered to the Hokage." My silence wasn't forgetting, it was survival. "We've been infiltrated and are under external threat. The danger isn't war, it's the systematic theft for a new organization. A group called Akatsuki. They are raiding small and medium-sized villages in the land of wind and earth. They are not seeking conquest, they are seeking money and resources to fund unknown projects. Their members are few, but lethal, and their attacks are precise and devastating. They have been attacking every 10 days. They have already attacked several villages. Their movements are predictable. According to our tactical maps, the next village on the map is Sunagakuer. We're weakened by Orochimaru's attack. We need Konoha's help. Deliver this message and prepare. My secret duel has been postponed indefinitely. We now face a greater enemy. Your strength is needed." The Windflower. Naruto felt a surge of adrenaline. Akatsuki. A legendary enemy, known only in whispers. The danger was real, and the target was Temari and her people. This wasn't a game of passion, it was a global crisis. Naruto stood up, his face reflecting the fury and determination of a leader. "Tucci-oji-san, Ayame-chan, I'm sorry for the interruption. But my decision is made. My priority is this," Naruto said, tapping the letter. "I have to deliver this message to the Hokage. The danger from Akatsuki is real." Naruto put on Ayame's scarf, a reminder of the peace he was meant to protect. He ran out of the outpost with a speed that frightened the falcon. The challenge of the devastation was over, now the true work of Konoha's hero began. The choice between Ayame's calm and Anko's danger would have to wait. The fate of the sand, and possibly the world, was in their hands. The war call and the emergency team. Naruto Uzumaki raced across the rooftops of Konoha with brutal speed his former form couldn't even dream of. Ayame's scarf flapped in the wind, a constant reminder of the life she was sworn to protect. Silent mobility jutsu allowed him to move effortlessly, an agile and lethal shadow. He arrived at the Hokage tower in an instant. The report to the Hokage. Naruto stormed into the third Hokage's office, disregarding protocol. "Hokage-sama. We need an emergency meeting now. It's the arena." He gasped, handing over Temari's encrypted letter. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, read the message with a slowness that exasperated Naruto, but which reflected the gravity of the content. His face turned somber. "Akatsuki. The threat is no longer a whisper. An S-rank organization is operating on our borders, And their goal is to destabilize our allies, Hiruzen muttered, tapping his pipe in his ashtray. The Hokage wasted no time. He used a jutsu summons. Within minutes, the room was filled with Konoha's elite. Kakashi Hatake appeared with his usual air of disinterest, though his eyes were sharp. The imposing figure of Jiraiya, the Sannin of Toads, appeared in a swirl of smoke, his commanding presence filling the room. The Akatsuki is moving faster than expected, Jiraiya. We need an immediate response. The Sand is our most vulnerable ally after Orochimaru's attack, Hiruzen explained, pointing at the map. The intervention team, tactical elevation. The debate was brief, marked by the seriousness of the Jonin. The mission wasn't A rank, it was an S-rank challenge, or even higher. It was Jiraiya who broke protocol, looking at Naruto, who stood firm in the room. This kid, Jiraiya said, pointing at Naruto. His relationship with the Sanjin Shuriki and Temari gives him inside knowledge. Furthermore, his report on the Kyokugyo and that new one silent mobility make him the fastest infiltration asset in the village. I volunteer for the mission, of course, but tactic and silent attack strategy must be directed by him. Kakashi nodded, his visible eye shining with barely concealed pride. I agree. Naruto is no longer a Jonin. His combat saturation strategy and new arsenal make him indispensable. On a rapid rescue mission, we need his speed. Hiruzen slammed the table, sealing the deal. That's what it will be like. Naruto Uzumaki, you'll be the tactical leader of this emergency intervention team. Yours will be the strategy for infiltration and initial contact. Kakashi and Jiraiya will go as level S reinforcements to ensure survival and support. Their mission is simple, reach the arena before Akatsuki, warn and protect the Kazekage and her sister, Temari. The Alliance's survival depends on it. Naruto felt a surge of euphoria. He hadn't just achieved a new power, that power was now recognized and respected by the legends of Konoha. The boy who was the bottom of his class now led an elite Sannin and Jonin. He'd come a long way. Yes, Hokage-sama. I will not fail. We will protect the sand, Naruto replied in a deep, resolute voice. The farewell of the promise. The team had to leave at dusk. Naruto only had time for a goodbye. He didn't go to his apartment, he went to his shelter. Ayame was waiting for him on the street, her face pale but firm. Master Tsuchi stood in the doorway, watching from a respectful distance. I already heard, Naruto-kun. Jiraiya-sama told us. Akatsuki, Ayame whispered. Naruto approached her, firmly grasping the scarf around her neck. Yes. It's the biggest mission of my life. I have to go save the arena. Temari asked me to. It's the only way to guarantee the peace and future I want for us, Naruto explained. Ayame approached. Her hands touched Naruto's Chunin vest, the symbol of his new and dangerous responsibility. She didn't challenge him, she didn't ask him to stay. Her affection was unconditional. A single tear slid down her cheek. It was a tear of fear, but also of pride. Please take care of yourself, Ayame pleaded, her voice breaking. Don't get lost in that darkness. Remember the warmth here. Come back to me. Ayame pulled him into a kiss. It was the kiss of a promise, the taste of ramen and loyalty. An anchor for the danger ahead. I'll be back, Ayame-chan. And when I do, we'll make that decision, Naruto promised her. Naruto pulled away, giving her one last squeeze. He turned toward the forest, where Jiraiya and Kakashi were already waiting silently. The leader of the emergency team leapt into the darkness. The fate of the sand, the challenge from Akatsuki, and the promise of a peaceful life with Ayame hung on his newfound strength. The leaf fox, with his beloved scarf on his back, was heading off to war. The race against the wind and shadow of Akatsuki. Night had fallen, a black curtain hiding the haste of the Konoha intervention team. Naruto, Jiraiya, and Kakashi stood at the village's west gate, ready for a journey that would define the Leaf's relationship with the sand and the future of the alliance. Naruto, as the tactical leader, mentally reviewed Jiraiya and Kakashi's strategy. The plan was simple: maximum speed using Naruto's new ability. The speed of the fox and the cage-level team. The distance to the land of wind is immense. If Akatsuki strikes every 10 days, we have, with luck, 4 days to arrive before the attack is imminent. We will use my summoning technique to speed up the trip, but the silent mobility jutsu Naruto's will be crucial to maintaining the pace at key times, Jiraiya instructed, his voice deep. Kakashi watched Naruto. Your new speed is impressive, Naruto. But your stamina with the Kyokukai, it's not infinite. If you fail, we're dependent on Jiraiya-sama. I will not fail, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto replied with a firmness that surprised his teacher. He wore Ayame's scarf discreetly beneath his Chunin vest. The journey begins. Jiraiya summoned a sealing scroll and from it released two small, swift toads, suited to the mountainous terrain and camouflage. The team mounted, but the weight of the Jonin slowed their progress. Naruto took the lead. Let me set the pace, Naruto said. Activated the silent mobility, channeling the Uzumaki/Kyuubi chakra into his feet. His movements transformed into agile and noiseless blur. The speed was so extreme that Jiraiya and Kakashi had to struggle to keep up with it, using their own Shunshin advanced and chakra speed boosting techniques. The trip was a self-imposed torture for Naruto. He couldn't afford to fail. The image of Temari, vulnerable, and the threat to peace that Ayame represented fueled him. Lessons on the path. As they raced through the desolate borders of the Land of Fire, Jiraiya took advantage of the brief breaks to impart knowledge that would be vital against Akatsuki. Akatsuki no Eskomo Orochimaru Naruto. It's not a quest for personal power, it's an ideological goal. Its members are specialists in assassination, capture, and sensory techniques, Jiraiya warned, as they recharged their chakra. Sensory techniques? Naruto asked, his strategic mind absorbing the information. Yes. They need to track their targets and avoid being tracked. Use silent mobility, being a concentration of demonic chakra, could be a beacon for them. You have to learn to mold your chakra futon to envelop your sensory aura. It's your only defense against their tracking ninjas, Jiraiya explained. The pressure on Naruto intensified. His new jutsu had a countermeasure. Kakashi he intervened, observing the horizon. And if you find yourself in combat, don't hesitate to use your lethal needles. Their destructive power is silent. But remember, if you're surrounded by a taijutsu specialist, you need the strength to quickly end the contact. Trust your contact dominance. And hit them. Kakashi's advice was a nod to the brutality of his training with Anko. In war, contact meant only one thing: quick victory. The leader's anxiety. As they entered the drier climate that the Land of Wind foretold, Naruto's tension grew. As the tactical leader, the responsibility for his two powerful companions, and the fate of Sunagakuer, rested on his shoulders. Naruto realized how far he'd come. Just a few months ago, he was the clown who couldn't pass the bell test. Now, he was leading a Sannin and the Copy Ninja on an S-level mission. His path of discipline, driven by passion and danger, had paid off. On the third day of the journey, with Naruto's feet burning from constant use of the Kyokukai, they reached the limits of the Land of Wind. The landscape became barren and desolate. We're close. One more day's march at most. If they haven't detected us, Akatsuki hasn't struck yet, Kakashi announced. Naruto stared at the sandy horizon. The sand was Temari's territory, the site of their duel of passion. But now, the stage had transformed into a potential battlefield. He had to arrive in time, not only to save his allies' village, but to prove that the sacrifice of his month of training and his promise to Ayame hadn't been in vain. The silence of the desert felt like a threat. The race against time in the shadow of Akatsuki continued. The Desert Strategy and the Wind Alliance. Arriving in Sunagakuer at dusk on the fourth day was a tense relief. The village, normally bustling despite its isolation, was strangely quiet. The ninja patrols were discreet, but their eyes reflected a controlled desperation. They had received Temari's preliminary message and knew they were in the crosshairs. Reunion with Temari, silent gratitude. Naruto, Kakashi and Jiraiya were immediately taken to the Kazekage's office. Temari he was there, next to his brother, Gaara, whose presence radiated a cold calm, but whose scent seemed to vibrate with impatience. Naruto and Temari's reunion was strictly professional in front of their comrades. Naruto Uzumaki, Kakashi Hitake, Jiraiya-sama. Thank you for answering, Temari said, her voice dense and formal. She focused on the Jonin, but her eyes met Naruto's. In that brief eye contact, a current of understanding passed between them, awareness of the danger and gratitude for its arrival. Gaara, the Kazekage, nodded. Your presence validates my sister's urgency. Sunagakuer is ready to hear Konoha's strategy. Temari approached Naruto under the pretext of handing him the defense map. In a whisper inaudible to the others, she said, "Thank you. I know what your silence means. I know what you risked to get here so quickly. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten, Fox." Temari's gratitude, without the usual sarcasm or passion, confirmed the seriousness of the situation. The Council of War, the strategy of the trap. Naruto, as the tactical leader, took the lead. He outlined the plan, drawing on the experience of his teammates. Akatsuki wants resources and money, therefore, they will attack the administrative center. Our strategy will be the total evacuation and the use of the village as a funnel. When the alarm is sounded, all non-essential civilians and ninja will be evacuated to the underground tunnels. The village will be empty. Kakashi nodded. This eliminates civilian casualties and transforms the defense mission into one off-targeted elimination. Naruto continued, pointing at a tactical map of the desert. Once the village is empty, we'll set up a series of Fuinjutsu traps at the main access points. These seals are not to hurt, but to restrict movement and channel the attackers towards a single point of confrontation. And the point of confrontation? Gaara asked, his voice expressionless. The point of confrontation is the front line. You, Kazekage. Jiraiya-sama. Kakashi-sensei. And I, Naruto declared. A small, but concentrated, strike force on the central plaza. Once the traps are triggered, you'll have no choice but to engage us. My silent mobility will allow me to flank and strike with my lethal needles if they try to surround us. Jiraiya approached Naruto, his face filled with a seriousness that was unusual for him. He spoke to him in a low voice, making sure that only Kakashi and Naruto could hear him. This is the crucial part, Naruto. Akatsuki may be after money, but I warn you, don't lose sight of the bigger threat. Akatsuki is also actively hunting for the Jinchuriki. Your appearance here, alongside Gaara, the Jinchuriki of the Ichibi, could make you both the prime target. It is crucial that neither you nor Gaara are captured or lose control. If you find yourself in trouble, run away. The beast's fate is more important than the mission. Naruto felt the chill. The danger wasn't just for Suna, but for himself. Preparing the battlefield, the Wind Alliance. The night was spent in preparation. Temari joined Naruto in the field work. While Kakashi and Jiraiya oversaw the placement of the seals, Fuinjutsu and evacuation routes, Naruto and Temari worked together on the surface. Naruto used his Uzumaki chakra to reinforce the foundations of the restriction seals, while Temari, with her fan, created wind currents that would erase any trace of chakra from the traps. The work was fluid, the perfect symbiosis of two ninjas of Futon and Fuinjutsu. Your new speed is ridiculous. And your chakra is denser. What did you do in that month of isolation? Temari asked, her eyes scrutinizing him as they placed a line off body sealed. I got stronger, Temari. For all the right reasons, Naruto replied, a slight tone of professional affection in his voice. She smiled faintly, an expression of camaraderie under pressure. Good. Because if we're going to survive this, we're going to need that strength. Naruto looked around. The desert, the sand, the impending battle. The scene was intimidating, but with Jiraiya, Kakashi, Gaara, and Temari by his side, and with his newfound strength, he felt he had reached the peak of his power. The alarm sounded. 3 slow, deep blasts, the signal for evacuation. Naruto stood up, his heart pounding. The time had come. The trap is set, Naruto said to Temari. Let's go to the front line. Temari nodded, her large fan already unfurled. Team Konoha and Suna's main force headed to the village's central plaza, now an empty battlefield, waiting in the shadow of Akatsuki. The war had begun. The Akatsuki assault and Jashin's-det. Sunagakura's central plaza was an empty amphitheater under the harsh desert sun. The defense team was in position, in the center, Gaara and Temari off the arena, flanking them, Jiraiya, Kakashi, and in the tactical vanguard, Naruto. The silence was total, broken only by the whisper of the hot wind. The day had arrived. Just when the tension was unbearable, 2 figures emerged from the main gate of the village, walking with an irritating calm, as if they were tourists. Both wore the unmistakable black layers with red clouds off Akatsuki. One of them was exceptionally tall and carried on his shoulder Agent triple-pointed sickle held together by a thick rope. The other, more compact one, had its face partially hidden by a hood. His step did not stop at the first line of restriction seals. Fuinjutsu in the blink of an eye, The man with the sickle simply cut the chakra lines off the seals with a casual movement of his weapon, releasing the traps with a ridiculous ease. Jiraiya frowned in deep concern. It's impossible. He didn't feel the chakra, he just felt the destroyed. Kakashi muttered, his Sharingan activated. Jiraiya took a step forward, his face grim. According to my most recent reports, although they are few, they are Kakuzu and Hidan. We do not know for sure the extent of their abilities, but they are considered extremely dangerous, with unusual survival rates. The man with the sickle, Hidan, who had been walking silently until then, heard the name and stopped. He had a strangely comical, almost stupid expression, but his eyes were filled with a terrifying fanaticism. "Hello, ha! So you know my name?" Hidan shouted, his voice echoing in the empty plaza. He began waving his sickle in a ridiculous greeting. "I hope you know my lord too. Jashin, because they will be fresh meat for him." The man in the hood, Kakuzu, whose face was covered in seams and had an air of eternal irritation, gave Hidan a look of pure contempt. "Shut up, Hidan. You always make a fool of yourself. The mission is to loot, not to lecture," Kakuzu hissed, his voice deep and raspy. Hidan was visibly offended. "But Kakuzu, Jashin-sama demands sacrifice and conversation. Look, we have an elite audience. I'm not interested in your stupid ritual. I'm interested in this village's money, and you're always wasting my time. This is a business, not a cult," Kakuzu retorted, sounding a tone of ancient weariness. Hidan crossed his arms, angry. "You faithless materialist. And slow to say the least. If you hadn't been counting your money, we would have massacred these people by now. And if you weren't wasting your time with your blood and your symbols, I would have sold their bodies already." Naruto, Gaara, Kakashi, and Jiraiya watched the exchange with a mixture of confusion and astonishment. The seriousness of the situation contrasted comically with the marital dispute between the two S-ranked terrorists. "Is this Akatsuki?" Temari whispered, her fan shaking slightly. Jiraiya smiled cynically. "It seems we've interrupted your couple's therapy. Don't get too confident, your power is as great as your dysfunction." At that moment, Kakuzu, fed up with the argument, stopped and gave a quick dark energy beam from his hand towards the Kazekage's tower. The attack wasn't intended to cause harm, it was a test. The beam was intercepted by a wall of sand created by Gaara, but the impact left a deep burn mark. Kakuzu finally turned his attention to the front line, his green eyes watching the Konoha and Suna ninja. A slow, macabre smile spread across his stitched face. Well, what a surprise. We came to plunder this forgotten village and found a much bigger gift," Kakuzu said, his tone one of pure greed. "Own-tailed beast, and the report indicates that the boy with the futon amplified is also the nine-tailed Jinchuriki." Kakuzu's eyes shone with a greed even deeper than his thirst for money. "Hidan. Forget about gold. We have two-tailed beasts in one place. What a great gift. The boss will be delighted." Hidan, upon hearing the word Jinchuriki, instantly forgot his argument. His eyes fixed on Naruto and Gaara. "Oh, Jashin-sama. A double sacrifice. This is worth far more than money. Prepare yourselves, infidels. Your hearts and souls belong to my lord." The air electrified. The target of the attack was no longer the arena gold, but the two young Jinchuriki. The danger had escalated to catastrophic levels. The trap had worked, but it had attracted the world's most dangerous predators. The sickle, the heart and immortality. The tension had become a palpable danger. Naruto, at the forefront, felt the pressure of the S-level challenge. His new arsenal had to be perfect. Kakuzu and Hidan, a few meters away, they put aside their dispute, their eyes fixed on the Jinchuriki. Kakashi broke the deadlock. With a swift motion, he lifted his ninja headband, revealing the Sharingan. He concentrated chakra and, with a single hand signal, launched a jutsu which he had copied from his former student, Sasuke. Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu, Elemento Fuego, Jutsu Bola de Fuego Grande. A roar of flames launched across the empty plaza. The massive fire attack was formidable, but in Akatsuki's eyes, it was a mere inconvenience. Kakuzu and Hidan dodged it with ridiculous ease, Hidan spinning his sickle and Kakuzu performing a sideways leap that seemed to defy gravity. "Slow," Hidan shouted, laughing maniacally. Jiraiya he didn't wait. The Sannin knew that distance only favored these unknown enemies. He launched an attack with a taijutsu explosive, his fists seeking to strike vital points. At the same time, his hair stiffened and projected like thorns, seeking to immobilize Kakuzu. What happened next shocked everyone. Kakuzu didn't use a jutsu, he simply lifted his leg and threw a brutal and dry kick. The impact with Jiraiya was deafening. The Sannin, one of the strongest ninja in the world, was sent flying through the air, crashing into a side building with devastating force. "Jiraiya-sama," Kakashi shouted. "These opponents are no small feat. We can't waste time with trial jutsu," Naruto roared. The sight of Jiraiya being taken down like a Genin dispelled any doubts in the young tactical leader's mind. It was time to use devastation. Naruto concentrated, channeling his chakra from Futon and Uzumaki. His cry of appear was not a jutsu of fire, but a war cry, a vocal distraction to hide the real threat. Inverted exclamation mark appear, Naruto roared. The lethal needle swere activated. Naruto fired a 5-needle burst with incredible precision and lethality, all directed at Kakuzu's torso. The sound was a click collective, and the needles, almost invisible, impacted. Kakuzu's Akatsuki robes were torn instantly, and not just the robe. The force of the Futon pure tore the cloth and the flesh. Kakuzu's human facade it's over. From the hole in his chest, a mass of black threads revealed itself, moving like snakes under her skin, with demonic masks sewn onto the threads. Gaara and Kakashi watched in horror. Hiding in the rear, Temari couldn't help but stifle a gasp. "He's a monster." The explosion of the needles had forced Kakuzu to reveal his true form, a creature made of threads and hearts. But Naruto wasn't finished. His concentration was absolute. 2 needles more were shaped and fired with blinding speed, aimed at Hidan, one directly to the heart and the other to the windpipe. He clicked. The only audible sound was the needles. Hidan, without time to react, was hit. The man with the sickle fell slowly onto his back. His body hit the square floor with a dry, unmistakable sound. Kakashi, Jiraiya, rising from the rubble, Gaara and Temari felt a wave of relief that turned into a silent celebration. "We did it," Kakashi thought. Kakuzu stared at Hidan's seemingly lifeless body. His transformed face, made of black threads, contorted into an expression of hatred and rage. Inverted exclamation mark. "Stop acting, you damn idiot." Kakuzu growled, his voice hoarse from the effort of his revelation. Hidan's body, lying motionless, began to move. To everyone's absolute horror, Hidan stood up. His movement was slow at first, then it became erratic. He brought his hand to his chest and he removed the needle from the heart. A jet of blood stained his cloak. Then he pulled the needle out of his windpipe. The blood flow and damage were terminal. But Hidan was lying. Inverted exclamation mark. "Yaya." They believed it, morons, Hidan shouted, his laughter hysterical. "A follower of Lord Jashin knows no death. Damned heathens. I am immortal." Hidan wiped the blood from his mouth, his fanatical expression returning. "The worst part is that they made Kakuzu. Now they're really going to have a bad time. The massacre has begun." The danger increased tenfold. They were not only facing a string monster with multiple lives, but also a fanatic who couldn't be killed. When devastation Naruto's had been useless, "Jiraiya-sama, immortality is real," Kakashi shouted, his Sharingan focused on the terrifying Hidan. Naruto felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert cold. These enemies were a nightmare. It was time to use silent movement to separate the duo. The mobility of a god and the horror of immortality. The revelation of Hidan's immortality and Kakuzu's monstrous form had frozen everyone except Naruto. The young Chunin understood that the time for precautionary tactics was over. Only brute force and speed could break this threat. "Jiraiya-sama, Sage Mode, now," Naruto shouted, his voice a whip of authority. "Gaara, Kakashi-sensei, cover us from the back. Commune alert, arena ready to immobilize. We have to separate them." Jiraiya nodded. He concentrated, and the red marks on the Sage Mode formed on his face. Natural force flooded the Sannin, elevating his power to divine levels. Naruto didn't stay behind. He couldn't take any chances. The danger required the speed of the fox. He closed his eyes for a moment and activated the silent mobility at its maximum power. The Kyuubi/Uzumaki's chakra was concentrated to the boiling point in his fists and feet. The moment he opened his eyes, he became a silent red ray. Naruto disappeared from sight. The first objective was Kakuzu, the most dangerous due to its complexity and attack. Naruto appeared next to the thread creature in an imperceptible instant. He concentrated all the energy of the silent mobility in his fist. Inverted exclamation mark Kyokakaiho, Taijutsu Extremo. The blow wasn't from a human. It was an impact with the three tails force channeled. Kakuzu didn't have time to react. The blow hit him with a cataclysmic force which launched him across the square. The thread monster crashed into the stone wall of a building with a dull thud and a burst of dust. The Jonin's reaction was pure amazement. Jiraiya and Kakashi had seen such speed and strength in training, but never in the heat of battle. "Amazing," Jiraiya exclaimed, before launching into combat. "That's the speed of a god," Kakashi muttered, his Sharingan registering every movement. Temari and Gaara froze. The Leaf Jinchuriki had surpassed everything they had imagined. The attention of Hidan was deflected by the violent blow to Kakuzu. This was all Jiraiya needed. The Sannin, in Sage Mode, launched himself at Hidan with a flurry of taijutsu reinforced with natural chakra, pushing him away from his partner. As Hidan tangled with the Sannin, the husky voice of Kakuzu roared from the rubble. It had lost one of its 5 hearts by Naruto's blow, and the demonic mask associated with that heart exploded. "Damn brat!" And giant rain dark energy, lightning release, shot out from Kakuzu's threads, aiming directly at Naruto. Naruto, however, was already moving. Instead of dodging, he used his silent mobility to appear directly behind Hidan, who was still fighting Jiraiya. Naruto didn't use his needles. He used the most lethal weapon he had at the time, his speed and the strength of the 9 tails in his fist. He hit the head off Hidan with a deadly force and focused. And crack brutal sound resounded. Hidan's neck snapped instantly. Hidan's head shot from his body, spinning through the air on a perfect trajectory, crashing into the sand about 15 meters away. His limp body fell, barely moving 4 meters. "You did it, brat," Jiraiya shouted, elated. "One down." Decapitation. Relief flooded everyone. It seemed that, although she was immortal, that physical separation was the key. But the victory was fleeting. 5 seconds of deathly silence passed. Then, Hidan's head, which was lying in the sand, began to scream. "Kakuzu! Help me!" Hidan screamed, his voice piercing and insane. The head's mouth kept moving, mouthing words with terrifying normality. "Bring me my body, please. I know we have differences, but bring my body. I can't feel anything." Gaara, Kakashi, Jiraiya and Temari's status screams. The horror of immortality had surpassed his darkest imagination. A talking head. Naruto was the only one who kept his composure. He knew his blow wouldn't be enough. The enemy was too strong to be defeated with a simple decapitation. "Gaara, immobilize Kakuzu." "Now," Naruto shouted. Gaara's sand reacted. A torrent of sand shot toward Hidan's body to prevent Kakuzu from retrieving it. Simultaneously, another wave launched itself at the thread creature. Kakuzu, however, was already on the move. With insane speed, he shot out threads to fish around Hidan's body, intending to sew it to his head. But Gaara's sand was faster. The sand enveloped Hidan's headless body, sealing it under a thick layer. Naruto stepped in, activating the silent mobility to block Kakuzu's line of sight with his partner's body. Kakuzu, having lost a heart and seeing that Konoha/Suna's strategy had worked to separate and neutralize Hidan, stopped. His threads retracted. The greed in his eyes turned into cold assessment. "You meddling brat," Kakuzu hissed, his eyes filled with the promise of revenge. "It's not a convenient battle." With explosive speed, Kakuzu launched a powerful jutsu dagwa, Suten, against the floor of the plaza. The water, upon impact with the heat, created a thick cloud of steam and mud, a perfect smoke screen. "We will return, Jinchuriki died and the next village will be yours." The Sannin, Kakashi, and Gaara launched attacks in the direction of the steam, but it was useless. When the steam dissipated, Kakuzu had disappeared, leaving only Hidan's talking head buried in the sand, shouting curses at his comrade. Silence returned. The threat of Akatsuki had receded, but the horror of its power remained etched in the minds of Naruto and his allies. They had won a tactical battle, but the war against immortality had only just begun. The mobility of the god and the horror of immortality. The revelation of Hidan's immortality and Kakuzu's monstrous form had frozen everyone except Naruto. The young Chunin understood that the time for precautionary tactics was over. Only brute force and speed could break this threat. Jiraiya-sama, Sage Mode, now, Naruto shouted, his voice a whip of authority. Gaara, Kakashi-sensei, cover us from the back. Commune alert, arena ready to immobilize. We have to separate them. Jiraiya nodded. He concentrated, and the red marks on the Sage Mode formed on his face. Natural force flooded the Sannin, elevating his power to divine levels. Naruto wasn't far behind. He couldn't risk invoking Sage Mode, it was taking too long. Danger required the fox's speed. He closed his eyes for a moment and activated the silent mobility at its maximum power. The Kyuubi/Uzumaki's chakra was concentrated to the boiling point in his fists and feet. The moment he opened his eyes, he became a silent red ray. Naruto disappeared from sight. The first objective was Kakuzu, the most dangerous due to its complexity and attack. Naruto appeared next to the thread creature in an imperceptible instant. He concentrated all the energy of the silent mobility in his fist. Kyokakaiho, Taijutsu Extremo. The blow wasn't from a human. It was an impact with the three tails force channeled. Kakuzu didn't have time to react. The blow hit him with a cataclysmic force which launched him across the square. The thread monster crashed into the stone wall of a building with a dull thud and a burst of dust. The Jonin's reaction was pure amazement. Jiraiya and Kakashi had seen such speed and strength in training, but never in the heat of battle. Amazing, Jiraiya exclaimed, before launching into combat. That's the speed of a god, Kakashi muttered, his Sharingan registering every movement. Temari and Gaara froze. The Leaf Jinchuriki had surpassed everything they had imagined. The attention of Hidan was deflected by the violent blow to Kakuzu. This was all Jiraiya needed. The Sannin, in Sage Mode, launched himself at Hidan with a flurry of taijutsu reinforced with natural chakra, pushing him away from his partner. As Hidan tangled with the Sannin, the husky voice of Kakuzu roared from the rubble. It had lost one of its 5 hearts by Naruto's blow, and the demonic mask associated with that heart exploded. Damn brat! And giant rain dark energy, lightning release, shot out from Kakuzu's threads, aiming directly at Naruto. Naruto, however, was already moving. Instead of dodging, he used his silent mobility to appear directly behind Hidan, who was still fighting Jiraiya. Naruto didn't use his needles. He used the most lethal weapon he had at the time, his speed and the strength of the 9 tails in his fist. He hit the head off Hidan with a deadly force and focused. And crack brutal resounded. Hidan's neck snapped instantly. Hidan's head shot from his body, spinning through the air on a perfect trajectory, crashing into the sand about 15 meters away. His limp body fell, barely moving 4 meters. You did it, brat, Jiraiya shouted, elated. One down. Decapitation. Relief flooded everyone. It seemed that, although she was immortal, that physical separation was the key. But the victory was fleeting. 5 seconds of deathly silence passed. Then, Hidan's head, which was lying in the sand, began to scream. Kakuzu! Help me! Hidan screamed, his voice piercing and insane. The head's mouth kept moving, mouthing words with terrifying normality. Bring me my body, please. I know we have differences, but bring my body. I can't feel anything. Gaara, Kakashi, Jiraiya and Temari's status screams. The horror of immortality had surpassed his darkest imagination. A talking head. Naruto was the only one who kept his composure. He knew his blow wouldn't be enough. The enemy was too strong to be defeated with a simple decapitation. Gaara, immobilize Kakuzu. Now, Naruto shouted. Gaara's sand reacted. A torrent of sand shot toward Hidan's body to prevent Kakuzu from retrieving it. Simultaneously, another wave launched itself at the thread creature. Kakuzu, however, was already on the move. With insane speed, he shot out threads to fish around Hidan's body, intending to sew it to his head. But Gaara's sand was faster. The sand enveloped Hidan's headless body, sealing it under a thick layer. Naruto stepped in, activating the silent mobility to block Kakuzu's line of sight with his partner's body. Kakuzu, having lost a heart and seeing that Konoha/Suna's strategy had worked to separate and neutralize Hidan, stopped. His threads retracted. The greed in his eyes turned into cold assessment. You meddling brat, Kakuzu hissed, his eyes filled with the promise of revenge. It's not a convenient battle. With explosive speed, Kakuzu launched a powerful jutsu dagwa, Suiten, against the floor of the plaza. The water, upon impact with the heat, created a thick cloud of steam and mud, a perfect smokescreen. "We will return. Jinchuriki died and the next village will be yours." The Sannin, Kakashi, and Gaara launched attacks in the direction of the steam, but it was useless. When the steam dissipated, Kakuzu had disappeared, leaving only Hidan's talking head buried in the sand, shouting curses at his fellow idiot Kakuzu. "Damn traitor, my body is useless without my head, idiot, don't leave me here. My lord Yashin will taste his blood, Kakuzu, I will leave here and offer you as a sacrifice, idiot." Silence returned. The threat of Akatsuki had receded, but the horror of its power remained etched in the minds of Naruto and his allies. They had won a tactical battle, but the war against immortality had only just begun. The bitter victory and the return of the challenge. The silence that followed Kakuzu's withdrawal was not one of peace, but of collective exhaustion and horror. The Konoha and Suna team was intact, but the fight had left deep psychological scars. Jiraiya, the Sannin, limped over, his side bruised from Kakuzu's initial kick. Kakashi he deactivated his Sharingan, his face pale from overuse. Gaara he kept the sand immobilizing Hidan's body and his talking head, which continued to shout curses and pleas to Jashin. "Gaara, make sure you seal that thing. We don't want the civilians to hear it," Jiraiya ordered, panting. The mission had been a tactical success, but Akatsuki's incredible strength had been a terrifying revelation. The embrace of danger. As soon as the tension subsided, Temari broke ranks. Her professional facade crumbled. She ran towards Naruto, her large fan forgotten on the ground. "Naruto!" Temari shouted, and launched herself at him with desperate strength. It was not an embrace of erotic passion, but of pure relief and gratitude. She was exhausted. She'd seen Hidan's head fly off, Kakuzu's monstrous form, and the godlike speed Naruto had used to save his village. She was alive, her brother was safe, and her home was still standing because of him. "You're okay. You're okay," Temari whispered, her face buried in Naruto's shoulder. Naruto hugged her back, feeling the tension in her body. "We're fine, Temari. The village is safe." Gaara watched the scene in silence. Kakashi and Jiraiya understood that the bond between those two had been forged in danger and was unbreakable. Information and strategic rest. The impromptu war council met in the Kazekage's office. "The mission is a strategic success," Kakashi concluded. "We've repelled two S-rank members, and most importantly, we have Hidan's head. His immortality is his downfall. We can extract vital information about Akatsuki from him, or use his body as bait for Kakuzu. And we have confirmation that they're hunting Jinchuriki," Jiraiya added, picking up a medicinal scroll. "That means Naruto and Gaara are active targets. We can't return immediately, we need to rest and replenish our energy." Gaara nodded. "Sunagaku offers you complete hospitality. You will remain here for 2 days. We don't want you to return exhausted if you are ambushed." For the rest of the Konoha ninjas, the arena had arranged the finest private suites. They weren't just simple rooms, they were luxury detached houses, each with its own sand garden and an atmosphere of absolute privacy, necessary for the mental rest of elite ninjas. Naruto, being the tactical leader of the mission and the savior of the village, received the best of the suites. "A house all to myself." Naruto smiled, feeling the weight of the mission finally fade away. It was the first time in months he could relax without the looming worry of an enemy or the pressure of training. The rest trap. Naruto said goodbye to his companions and entered his private suite. It was a spacious, cool space filled with details of the Win culture. He took off his Chunin vest, feeling immense relief. Ayame's scarf, it was the only piece of his uniform that he kept. He fell onto the bed, his mind finally blank. Success. The word echoed. The reward for discipline was Temari's life, Gaara's safety, and the promise of returning to Ayame. But Naruto Uzumaki's fate never allowed him lasting peace. The young shinobi was so exhausted that he did not notice the sensory seal discreet that had been placed near his bed, waiting. Naruto fell asleep with a smile of relaxation and triumph, unaware that overconfidence in the security of his private suite could be his perdition. The interruption would not come from Akatsuki, but from someone who saw Naruto's success not as a victory for the village, but as the payment of a personal debt and the opportunity to domination in neutral territory. The Windflower had waited for its moment. Naruto's rest was about to turn into the battle of passion Temari had been putting off. The spirit of the desert and the dead of passion. The luxury and silence of the arena suite were a seductive trap that Naruto's exhausted mind couldn't detect. He had surrendered to sleep with Ayame's scarf still around his neck, seeking the peace he had earned. Naruto was about to fall into deep sleep when he felt a slight change in the air. He opened his eyes, his body trying to respond to the ninja instinct. But the exhaustion of the Kyokugyo and the tension from the fight with Akatsuki had pinned him to the bed. He could barely move. Temari was standing next to his bed. "Temari? What are you doing here? And why are you dressed like that?" Naruto managed to mutter, his gaze involuntarily lowering. Temari wasn't wearing her usual kunoichi uniform. She was wrapped in 2 pieces of black lace. Above, the lace was transparent, barely covering her pink intimacies. Below, oblong thread in the back and a slightly thicker piece in the front, leaving almost everything to the imagination. The vision was a direct provocation. The only muscle in Naruto's entire body that wasn't exhausted, reacted explosively, creating a gigantic lump under the sheets. Temari smiled, the smile of a predator who had caught her prey. "I come to compensate you for saving my village, Naruto. I come to give you the spirit of the desert for you to take. And from what I see," Temari said, and her hands slid along the sheets, surrounding and feeling the strain off the young shinobi. Although your body is tired, you still have great power to dissipate." Naruto gasped. "Ah. Temari, you see, we just can't be together. We're from different villages, and Ichiraku's ramen is waiting for me." Temari didn't give him time to finish his sentence. Her eyes, filled with a deep and dangerous lust, didn't diminish. With a sudden force, Temari pulled back the sheets and Naruto's shorts. "So your heart belongs to a ramen cook, huh, Naruto?" she asked, her voice low and seductive. Her gaze was one of utter admiration at the power revealed. "Even so, you'll take the desert spirit as a farewell and a thank you. And I'll take something from you too." Temari then bowed. The assault was direct. She used her mouth with expertise that surpassed any fantasy Naruto had ever had. The dominance was absolute. The gentle tugs and moist heat combined with her breath, creating exquisite torture for the motionless man. Naruto lost control of his breathing. His body arched against his will. Ah. He gasped hoarsely, air rushing into his lungs. The assault continued for 10 minutes of sweet agony. Naruto was still, unable to resist the pleasure. Even though it wasn't what his mind wanted, his body, guided by Temari's expert hand, enjoyed it with brutal intensity. Finally, Temari stood up, her blonde hair slightly damp. She climbed onto the fox spirit, her knees on either side of his hips, to unleash the power it had caused. She moved with the grace and the speed of an expert in matter, combining rhythmic movement with sensual pressure. Their bodies met, the kunoichi of the wind and the jinchuriki of the leaf. The tension accumulated during a month of exile and a life-or-death battle was released in that act of raw passion. Naruto couldn't resist it any longer. The control he'd learned broke in a hoarse cry of pleasure. Theme 5, Naruto surrendered. She felt the Kyuubi chakra discharge inside her. It was an explosion of warm and powerful energy that almost suffocated from the inside, reminding him of the immensity of the power he possessed. It wasn't just pleasure. It was the essence of a demonic being. Temari pulled away, her eyes closing to absorb the jolt of energy. She climbed off him and adjusted her lingerie with impressive calm. She leaned down and gave him a kiss on the forehead to Naruto. She began to walk slowly, backward, knowing that Naruto, despite his exhaustion, wouldn't take his eyes off her. Her body wrapped in sheer lace was the ultimate provocation. He stopped at the threshold of the luxury suite. "That was amazing, Fox. And you didn't even have to move," Temari said, a triumphant smile on her face. She flashed him a morbid look which promised the memory of that sensual assault. "Good luck in your life and in your village," Temari said, and disappeared into the darkness of the hallway. Naruto lay motionless in bed. The lump in the sheets was gone, replaced by final exhaustion and even greater confusion. He had saved Suna and had been rewarded with the wildest passion he could imagine. His scarf, the symbol of his loyalty to Ayame, remained around his neck. He had honored Temari with his body, but his heart remained in the ramen kitchen. The path of decision had become more complicated, And the debt of gratitude had been repaid with a passion that would haunt him all the way to Konoha. The confession of the journey and the danger of peace. The second day in Sunagakure was notable for absence of incidents. Naruto was finally able to fall into a deep, restful sleep. Temari she didn't return. The Kunoichi of the Wind was a strategist who knew when to retreat. She had taken what she wanted and respected the fact that on this occasion, Naruto's will and body would be alert and ready to defend himself. The morning sun found Naruto in his luxury suite, eating breakfast alone and reflecting on the previous night. Temari's passion had been a release of demonic energy as violent as the Akatsuki attack. Tucci's question about who his heart belonged to now resonated louder than ever. The return and the departure. The Konoha team gathered at the gates of the arena. The atmosphere was one of renewed seriousness. Hidan's head had been secured in an unbreakable seal within the arena, and the return routes had been carefully planned to avoid an ambush by Kakuzu. Temari she was there to see them off. Her demeanor was again that of a professional commander, but her eyes shone with shared knowledge. When it was time to say goodbye, Temari approached Naruto. In front of her classmates, she gave him a warm and firm hug, a show of respect for the leader who had saved his home. As they separated, Temari winked at him with unmistakable mischief, a smug smile on his lips. The gesture did not go unnoticed. Jiraiya and Kakashi, both known for their intense and often perverted curiosity, exchanged glances of deep interest. "Let's go," Naruto ordered, trying to ignore the inquisitive looks. The interrogation of the road. The return trip was as quick as the outward journey, driven by the need to inform the Hokage. However, the strategic silence that reigned during the first part of the journey was broken by the persistence of the Jonin. "So, Naruto," Jiraiya began, with a suspicious smile. "I noticed the Kazekage's sister seemed very grateful. Was it alliance protocol, or was there a cultural exchange more intimate?" Naruto tried to divert the conversation. "Jiraiya-sama, the mission was a success. We obtained vital information about Akatsuki and Hidan's immortality. Let's focus on the report." Yes, the report," Kakashi chimed in, the visible eye smiling. "But as your teacher, I'm concerned about your emotional well-being. An elite shinobi needs a release of tension after an S-level fight." And that wink, Naruto. That wasn't a thanks for the report, that was a promise to pay. Jiraiya leaned closer, his Sanin's curiosity piqued. "I need the details, brat. Did the wind flower use its magic on you? Wind elemento create friction? Or did he prefer the taijutsu central? Give me the details for my next novel." Naruto felt trapped between two cage-level perverts. He knew the truth would come out sooner or later. If he didn't give in, tension would build, and if either of them accidentally mentioned anything in front of Ayame, the peace of their refuge would be shattered forever. It was better to confess now. Naruto sighed deeply, Ayame's scarf brushing his chin. "Okay. You're right. Temari came to my private suite the second night," Naruto confessed, his ears perking up. Jiraiya and Kakashi approached, their faces shining with anticipation. Well, they exclaimed in unison. Naruto proceeded to recount the details of Temari's entry, her attire, the paralysis of her body, and the nature of the assault. He explained the feeling of his body having been taken over to release the demonic energy, and how the experience, despite his moral reservations, had been overwhelming. And then he left. He said he was the spirit of the desert and a farewell, Naruto concluded, feeling strangely relieved of the burden. Jiraiya slapped his forehead, elated. "A tactical genius and a stud. Naruto, you are my true disciple." The reverse domination. Kakashi shook his head, but his smile was wide. "You've improved your taijutsu and futon, and you've won over a Jonin-level kunoichi. Congratulations, Naruto. But this complicates things." "Complicate is the key word," Naruto said, looking at the horizon. "She asked me if my heart belonged to a ramen cook. And the problem is that I don't know how to answer that. I don't know if I want the fire and passion of danger, or the refuge and calm of Ayame." Jiraiya put aside his perversion for a moment. "Naruto, you can't have both. Temari is the way of the shinobi, of the passion that drives you to be strong. Ayame is the way of the Hokage, of the peace you fight to protect. One is your driving force, the other is your anchor. You'll have to choose upon your return." Naruto nodded. His confession to his teachers hadn't been a simple outpouring, But a preparation for peace had broken up with Temari. He knew the final decision was waiting for him in Konoha. The success report and the final decision. The Konoha emergency team returned under the cover of night. The mission had been a resounding success in terms of intelligence and deterrence, although the Akatsuki threat had magnified exponentially. The report and the tension. Naruto, Jiraiya and Kakashi immediately headed to the Hokage Tower. Hiruzen Sarutobi heard the report from the Hidan's immortal Itachi on the Kakuzu's monstrous threat form with a seriousness that chilled the blood. Naruto, as the tactical leader, gave the most detailed report, emphasizing the need to study Hidan's body to find his weak spot. You have acted with the wisdom of an experienced Jonin, Naruto, Hiruzen concluded. Having repelled 2S rank Akatsuki and secured intelligence is a vital victory. The village will celebrate your success. Despite the joy of returning and achieving success, Naruto was under personal strain. He had 2 matches pending. Leaving the Hokage Tower, Jiraiya and Kakashi parted ways. Jiraiya punched him in the shoulder. Think carefully about your decision, brat. Fire is tempting, but the anchor will keep you grounded. The first place Naruto headed to wasn't Ichiraku, but Anko's training camp. He knew he couldn't face Ayame without first close the chapter with the dangerous Kunoichi. The Serpent's Farewell. He found Anko waiting in the training clearing. His expression was one of impatience and anticipation. The fox has returned. And Jiraiya's report says you performed masterfully. I suppose the triple punishment worked, Anko said, her voice a purr of defiance. Anko-sensei, the mission was a success. And yes, the training made me stronger. But I came here to tell you something important, Naruto said, his voice firm, his gaze unwavering. Anko sensed the seriousness in his tone and crossed her arms. Tell me, before I drag you by the neck. What we have. Can't be any more, Naruto declared. The silence was absolute. The wind stopped blowing. Fury and disbelief crossed Anko's face. Are you kidding, brat? After all the danger, after I showed you true power? You're going to tell me you're going to choose a life of D-rank missions? Anko hissed, her hand unconsciously touching her curse mark. My heart isn't here anymore, Naruto said, touching Ayame's scarf. My heart is with Ayame. You taught me to be strong to survive, but she taught me we survive. The path of danger is tempting, and your passion is addictive, but the path of the Hokage is the path of peace and refuge. I cannot build that refuge if I keep seeking fire. Anko's expression turned from rage to twisted acceptance. She understood the nature of the choice, calm over chaos. Go, Anko ordered, her voice a cold whisper. Don't come back. Ever. If I see you again, I won't answer for my actions. You're a coward, Naruto, but at least you've chosen a path. Naruto bowed, a final gesture of respect. Thank you, sensei. For everything. He turned and walked away, leaving Anko alone in the darkness. He had cut the anchor of danger, and the release was as powerful as any jutsu. The final decision in ramen. Naruto walked toward Ichiraku. The light from the stall was a beacon of warmth in the night. He came in. Ayame and Tucci were there. The atmosphere was thick, not of hostility, but off-white. Naruto's decision was in the air. You're back. The hero, Tucci said, unsmiling, his face a picture of solemnity. Tucci-oji-san. Ayame-chan, Naruto said, sitting down on the bench. The mission was a success. But I already had the conversation I needed to have. Naruto took off Ayame's scarf, folded it neatly, and placed it on the bar. You were right, Tucci-oji-san. I can't build a shelter if I keep playing with fire. I need to decide my priorities. I can't be the Hokage of Konoha if I don't know what peace I want to protect. Ayame looked at him, her eyes full of hope. Naruto looked at Ayame, his blue eyes fixed on hers, without the slightest shadow of doubt. My life, my heart, belongs to the shelter you gave me. The fire is powerful, but the anchor is what will keep me firm. My path of the Hokage is not about being the strongest, but about protect the warmth of my home. Naruto took Ayame's hands. Ayame, you're the only woman in my life. You'll be the center of my world. The windflower and the snake. They're over. If you want, from this moment on, I'm your fiancé. Ayame couldn't hold back her tears. They were tears of pure joy. Yes. Yes, Naruto-kun, Ayame exclaimed. Tucci smiled, a big, satisfied smile. You have done it. You have chosen to You are now truly worthy of being Konoha's hero, Naruto. And my son-in-law, Tucci said. The ramen master went off to prepare the biggest and most special bowl of Shigure no Ate had never existed. Naruto leaned over the counter and kissed Ayame with a tenderness and certainty he'd never felt before. The decision had been made. The young Chunin had found peace in ramen, and the Hokage's path had become clear. From that day on, the challenge of passion was over, and the path to building a family and a home in Konoha lay before him. The night of the anchor and the eternal promise. The decision had been made at the humble ramen stand, sealed by a kiss and Master Tucci's blessing. Tucci approached the bar, with a proud smile and a fatherly complicity. Ayame, you're exhausted from worry and work. And Naruto needs a proper rest, worthy of a hero who just saved the allied village. I give you permission. Go spend the night with your fiancé. Ayame blushed, but her eyes shone with gratitude and affection. Thank you, Dad. Naruto stood up, feeling a lightness in his spirit that surpassed any chakra surge. He took Ayame's hand, and together they headed to the young Chunin's modest apartment. The warmth of the shelter. Naruto's apartment was small, messy, but warm. It was Ayame's first time there, and the simplicity of the place contrasted sharply with the cold luxury of the arena suite. This time, however, there was no pressure, no danger, no body weary from the Kyuubi's exhaustion. There was only willpower and love. What happened that night wasn't a deliberate act of lust like Temari's assault or Anko's training. It was a celebration of choice of the heart and the surrender to affection. Naruto and Ayame hugged in the center of the room, their lips meeting in a kiss that was a confirmation of the promise they had just made. The kisses became deep, filled with the tenderness repressed for months. Naruto, who had mastered the Kyokaiho, moved with a subtlety and softness he had never needed to use in the face of danger. His hands, which had fired the death needles, caressed Ayame with a reverence that made her tremble. Ayame, the ramen cook, gave herself completely. She guided Naruto with a gentleness that taught him a new kind of self-control, the discipline of nurturing. They slowly shed their clothes, a mutual act of affection. Naruto admired Ayame's beauty, so different from the warrior intensity of Temari or Anko. She was his peace. They lay down on the simple bed. The release of their love was a slow, steady climb, a path of passion guided by affection. Naruto hovered over her, his eyes locked with Ayame's. Naruto's focus wasn't on chakra, but on emotional connection. Ayame wrapped her arms and legs around him, bringing the encounter to its highest point. Love and passion were released in a shared cry. Naruto! Inverted exclamation mark M. The apartment was filled with the echo of the release, but this time, the chakra released was not the Kyuubi's demonic pulse, but a Uzumaki chakra warm wave, full of affection and tranquility. Her chakra merged with Ayame's, enveloping them in a cocoon of warmth that sealed their bond. The promise of the two missions. After climaxing, Ayame snuggled up against Naruto's chest. The Chunin's heart beat with a calm constancy beneath her ear. Ayame raised her head and looked into Naruto's eyes, her own eyes moist with excitement and satisfaction. I love you, Naruto, Ayame whispered, her voice full. There's nothing else in the world I want besides you. My place is here, waiting for your return, and my happiness is your success and your peace. Naruto stared back, with the certainty that neither the Kyuubi nor the Akatsuki's challenges could alter. The path of the Hokage had been redefined for him. I love you too, Ayame, Naruto replied, kissing the top of her head. Naruto hugged her tighter, feeling the weight of his new responsibility. Tucci's voice, Anko's defiance, Temari's sacrifice. Everything had been resolved in this choice. From now on I will have two missions in life, Naruto declared, his voice filled with the solemnity of an oath. Take care of Konoha and take care of you, my life. With that promise, the future Hokage embraced his fiancée. The hero had found his anchor. The story of Naruto Uzumaki, the elite Chunin, was far from over, but the war for her heart had come to an end.